Welcome to Adam's Story. Join us on an exciting journey where we explore story Reddit every day. We bring you many story. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Let's dive in together.
I work security at Disney World. Well, I did. I work in security at Disney World, the happiest place on earth. Typically, I wouldn't say where I work as obviously there are some pretty strict rules about things employees can put online, but I just don't think I can tell this properly without that context. And, honestly, I think this may be it for me anyway with this job. I just can't see myself working here any longer now. I've been with the company for 23 years. The first 20 years I worked in the parks, nabbing shoplifters and rounding up people who were drinking too much for the heat. Occasionally there'd be a fight to break up, but people usually kept it pretty mild. The heat and walking was getting too much for me the last few years, so I asked to be transferred somewhere with AC, and the company moved me to one of their resorts. While the working conditions were 110 and number 37, better as far as climate and comfort go, the guest issues were trickier / mainly domestics. I guess the expensive and stress of vacation got to a lot of people, and I'd be called by neighboring rooms because some mom and dad were yelling at each other. I'd try to suggest they take a nap or go do separate activities for a bit, and that would usually calm them down. But none of that is what I'm here for. I've got to get this out while I have time. 3 days ago I got a call from management. Apparently a couple of days before that, housekeeping had went into a room that should have been turned over that day. Turned over is when one guest leaves by about 11 a.m. and the next guest checks in around 3 p.m., and all of the guests' items were still in the room. Housekeeping made a note of it and moved on, but during the next 2 days when they entered the room, everything was still there and untouched. I went to check it out, and sure enough there was an empty room full of luggage, clothes, snacks, some toys, everything a family would need for vacation. The manager had already looked up the previous reservation, and it was for a family, dad, mom, 2 little kids. I tried to call the phone numbers they had given, but all I got was voicemail. We were a bit stumped, so I made the call that housekeeper could clean the room and take the family's personal items to be held until we got in contact with someone. I went digging into the reservation more. The family had arrived 5 days before housekeeping discovered all of their stuff. I found that the family had paid a parking fee and their vehicle description was listed. A quick walk of the parking lots and I had easily located their vehicle. So that ruled out a car accident or them deciding to just leave all their stuff behind. Next, I saw that they had bought a dining plan. This is when a guest prepays for all of their food. They're given a certain number of credits to use for meals. This family had only used 3 credits, and the last one was 2 days after they checked in. It appeared that the day they arrived, they got here late and probably just stayed on the resort. The next day they used 2 credits at Epcot. The second park day they used just 1 credit at Magic Kingdom, and it was at breakfast time. Now at Disney we have something called Magic Bands. Magic Bands are worn by the guests and act as a room key, park ticket, credit card, dining reservation payment, fast pass, a system used to bypass lines, and more. It took some work, but I was finally able to look up this family's fast pass history. The day they went to Magic Kingdom, they had breakfast at a restaurant in the park, rode a couple of rides, and then rode their last ride, It's a Small World, around 11 a.m. then nothing. Finally, it was time to bring in someone else on this. I called an old co-worker at Magic Kingdom and asked him to pull security footage for It's a Small World at the time they wrote it, and I made my way over there. When I got there, my friend was very confused, almost distraught, looking. He showed me what he found. There's usually a camera in the direction of where rides load and unload. The footage showed them scanning their bands to use fast passes for the ride and boarding the ride. The footage from the exit of the ride just showed the other people in their car exiting. They weren't there. Of course we thought the worst. Maybe one of the kids had fallen out and mom and dad and the other kid got off in the middle of the ride to help, and they all got injured or killed or stuck in machinery somewhere. So we shut down the ride. Middle of the damn day. Turned off that earworm music and turned up the lights. Me and my buddy walked that ride 3 times before we called in help. Eventually there was close to 10 cast members searching, and we didn't find shit except for 3 cell phones and a hat. I was right stumped. I've kept digging the past couple of days, and I'm not sure who to tell what I found next to. I've called the police and I suppose they're on the way, but the company has a way of covering up things like this, and I decided I can't live with myself if I don't put out some type of warning. I kept digging into their reservation over the last couple of days, and today I noticed they had purchased Memory Maker. There are photographers all over the parks and cameras in a lot of the rides, and, with Memory Maker, the photos are all free. They automatically get added to a guest's Disney account when the system knows their picture has been taken. And the system always knows. Everyone's whereabouts are always known with the magic bands. Well, I opened up their Memory Maker photo album and, I swear, there's 732 pictures. The first 30 or so are pretty normal. Epcot, a few rides, in front of the castle. But the rest are all in It's a Small World. The rides only take one picture per go around. So it appears as though this family has ridden this ride over 700 times. The first picture was pretty normal. Everyone looked happy, it was busy day and a full car of guests. The next one is rough to look at. The car is empty except for this little family and they look so darn confused. The next 10/15 I can see Dad getting angry, yelling. Mom is holding onto those two kids like her life depends on it, and you can see the kids getting increasingly upset, crying. And it goes on, and on, and on. After 50 or so it looks like they're trying to get out. In one the dad is missing. In another they're all gone. Maybe like they bailed early in the ride and tried to walk out, but in the very next one, they're all right back in that damn car. After around 450 or so, I only see the mom and kids. It's just when I look closely I can see Dad, maybe just his body now, slumped down in one of the other seats. Since about 675, there's just Mom and one kid. Another body in another seat. The mom and kid aren't moving anymore. I think them two are still alive, just damn near catatonic. Looking straight ahead, pale. And, y'all, I swear on my fucking life, the dolls are moving or something. In some of these pictures I can tell they aren't where they should be. I even saw one with a doll in the car with his family. I can't look anymore or I'm going to lose my lunch. I closed the album. Its file size has increased since I closed it. God, are there new pictures being added? I see on security cameras that the local PD just arrived, so they'll take over soon. I wish I knew what the fuck is going on, but I also wish this damn thing had never landed in my lap. I don't think I'll be able to update this. After I talk to the police, I think I'm going to walk out of here and never come back. I just wanted to get this out there, before Disney feeds the media some bullshit cover-up as to why a whole family vanished. They didn't vanish. I know where they are. My mother-in-law was poisoning me, then I found out why. Everyone has their own nightmare in-law story, though I couldn't imagine how bad mine would be. As it turns out, the worst thing wasn't my mother-in-law poisoning me, the worst thing was why she did it. I met Craig on one of my rare vacations and we had sort of a whirlwind relationship. We fell hard for each other and were married in a courthouse wedding within 2 months without ever meeting each other's families. Mine visited a few weeks later and after their initial shock really liked Craig. While we got moved in together and figured out married life, I got to hear more about his parents who lived near the rest of his extended family a few hours away, though we never saw them. My work schedule is rough. I work 6 to 7 days a week and my off days are a blur of appointments and errands. I think in the 2 years before I met Craig I only left the city once. I finally got a few days off so we could head to visit his family about 6 months later. His whole family came over and everyone seemed thrilled to meet me, except for his mom, Betsy. She was cold and distant, and could sit there without saying a single word to me. It was creepy, but I kept trying to spark up a conversation. On our last day he announced that we should take an afternoon hike up into the national park their house sat on the edge of. Betsy made lunch and I was changing to go out when it hit me, just waves of nausea. I wound up in the bathroom for hours that afternoon. I figure it was just a touch of something and thought nothing of it. We went back a few months later and again had a great time except for Betsy. She wouldn't talk to me, though Craig brushed it off and said she was just getting to know me. He finally said we could rent jet skis the next day and explore a lake in the next town as a way to get out of the house and unwind, which made me feel better. I was so excited to tell everyone where we were going, but it wasn't to be. After eating I got so sick I could barely walk for the next 2 days. At this point I started to get suspicious. No one else was sick, and we all ate the same food. It seemed like Betsy must have been up to something, but it wasn't until our next visit when a night in a romantic cottage another hour up the road was cancelled due to me getting sick that I was sure Betsy was poisoning me. Craig said I was insane. He said it must be an allergy to something his mom used in her cooking, which actually made sense, though I never had time for an appointment to get it checked out. Still, I decided on the next trip that I'd make a big casserole and bring it with us. If I cooked the food and served it, nothing could be added. Well, I hadn't had 2 bites before I realized I had left the wine I was drinking unattended while I was heating up the casserole, and my stomach was already doing flips. You know what happened next, and it was not pretty. I was so sure his mom was poisoning me, and I confronted Craig about it. I told him I wouldn't visit his family again if she was there. It was our first big fight, but he finally said he wouldn't force me to visit, and we could figure out how best to deal with the situation. She had never been nice to me, so it wasn't a loss. The next time I got time off, we decided we'd head to that little cottage we had rented before and not been able to use. We were driving right past his family's place, and it seemed rude not to stop, so we compromised and bought some pizzas. I even decided just not to drink anything unless it was water from the tap. We got in and threw pizza on our plates when one of his cousins arrived and everyone briefly left the food unattended. I realized my mistake almost immediately, and decided to try an experiment. Craig and I both had 2 slices, so I just switched our plates while everyone was in the next room. Craig was so sick I was really worried about him. The drive back to the city was awful, we had to pull off a lot, and he was a mess. We had been back home for 3 days before I broke down and told him I had switched the plates. I've never seen such anger before. The rage in his eyes is something I'll remember for the rest of my life. He shoved me into a wall and then came flying at me. He threw me over the couch, but I somehow managed to grab my keys and phone and ran out the door not even wearing shoes. I got lucky with the elevator and made it to a friend's place safely, finally turning off my phone after I missed his 47th call. I had no idea what to do or when it would be safe to go home. It was the scariest time of my life. It was 2 days before I turned my phone back on, and when I heard the message from the police I drove upstate immediately. Craig was dead. Betsy had shot him after he broke into her house and charged at her with a knife. I learned that Craig had been married once before, and his wife had died on a tragic hiking accident. Craig made a lot of money in the life insurance payout, and Betsy always suspected Craig had killed her, and was nervous about letting him be alone with me, especially out in the remote area he was so familiar with from his childhood. So she ensured that every time he planned an outing that I would be sick. It wasn't easy, but she didn't think I would believe her, as no one else had ever shared her suspicions about Craig. I found the life insurance policies he took out on me without my knowledge afterward, and refused to press charges against Betsy. She was only trying to protect me. I still visit her from time to time when I need to get out of the city. I love her cooking. I'm so happy that my ex-wife is miserable. 3 years ago I, 48 male, found out my wife, 46 female, was having an affair. She met a guy at work and came home one day telling me she was in love with him, no longer loved me and wanted a divorce. This was a guy she'd only known for 3 months at the time. She and I had been together since we were in our 20s. We have 3 kids, 28 male, 26 male and 23 female. Well, I tried to fight for my marriage and didn't want a divorce, but she simply would not stop seeing this guy. After one weekend where she disappeared from Friday afternoon to Sunday night, I ended up throwing her out of the house. She immediately moved in with this guy. The only excuse she ever gave me was, "I never wanted to hurt you, but there's just something about this guy. And I deserve to be happy." That was it. That was the depth of her reasoning for throwing everything we built together away. We ended up finalizing our divorce in early 2022. Although I had very hard feelings toward her, I faked it enough to get pretty favorable divorce terms from her. It seems she was so eager to be with her dream man that she didn't have time for a long divorce. So in the end I got to keep my pension and the house, which I had bought from my grandmother. I did have to give her half of my 401k, however. The effect on our kids was pretty devastating. All 3 of them took it very hard. My oldest son told her that if she chose this man, he'd never have a relationship with her again. As of right now, neither of our sons has a relationship with their mother. Our daughter does talk to her from time to time, but their relationship is very strained, to say the least. My daughter is a very kind person and she tries, but she usually ends her conversations with her mother even more upset than when they started. About 4 months after the divorce, my ex contacted me out of the blue. She told me she had made a terrible mistake and asked if she could come home. Her dream man turned out to be an alcoholic who she says is verbally abusive and wasted all of her money. I used this opportunity to tell her exactly what I thought of her as a person, a wife and a mother. I told her this was her life now and to deal with it. I told her she no longer had a home at this house and to never contact me again. Then a few things happened over the last year that have driven her to start trying to contact me again. First off, I met someone. My sister introduced me to a friend of hers who is also divorced, and she and I hit it off. We've been seeing each other since last summer, and while we've agreed that neither of us wants to get married again, we are together. Once my ex heard about this, she once again tried to contact me, but I ignored her. My son also got married and didn't invite his mother. She again contacted me to try to get me to intervene on her behalf. I told her I would talk to him, but I never did. Secretly, I feel like she deserves all the pain she's feeling when it comes to our kids. She destroyed our family without so much as an afterthought. Too bad, so sad. Now she recently told our daughter that she finally broke it off with the dream man because she could take his drinking and total lack of responsibility. He wasted her half of the 401k that I had to give her. He also totaled her car driving drunk. This from a man in his 40s. Again, she knew this guy for 3 months and torpedoed our whole family for him. On the face of it, I act like I feel sorry for her, but inside I really delight in the fact that she's so unhappy. Call me evil or whatever, I don't care. She brought this on herself and it serves her right. I actually had to sit there one Saturday night while she got ready for a date with this guy and laughed on the phone with her friend about how awkward our living situation was. I lived in hell for over a year because of her. Wait until she finds out our son and his wife are going to have a baby later this year. Maybe if she had been able to keep her legs closed, she'd get to meet her grandchild. Enjoy your one-bedroom apartment and your broken-down used car. Me and my new partner will think of you when we're on vacation in Hawaii this summer. Hawaii was the trip my ex and I always planned to take once our daughter finished college. Maybe I'll send her pictures. I hired a private investigator on myself to see what he could find. I regret it immensely. It's not every day that someone hires a private investigator, especially not my friend. She had her reasons, though. She suspected her husband of infidelity. When she shared what the pie had found with me, it piqued my interest. I'd always dreamed of becoming a pie, so I sheepishly asked her for the investigator's card. At the time, I had a lot of extra cash, and my life had been feeling dull. I spent most of my days playing games and watching YouTube, and I wanted to shake things up. So I decided to hire the same private investigator as my friend. I told my boyfriend about my plan, and he was into it too. We came up with a plan for him to act like I was missing, and submitted details about my family, occupation, and so on. I warned my boyfriend that we wouldn't be able to meet up while the investigation was happening, but he was fine with it. However, things quickly took a strange turn. When the pie got involved, he seemed to doubt my existence. My boyfriend had to convince him that I was real, and then the investigator kept accusing my boyfriend of wasting his time. Finally, on the 5th day of the investigation, my boyfriend called me in a panic. He claimed that the only person who had ever lived in the state with my name, which is very unique, had died a year before I was born. Even more eerily, this girl had lived in my childhood home. I thought my boyfriend was playing a prank, but his tone was bone-chilling. "I'm not playing a prank," he said. "The PI even took me to the gravesite. It had your exact name, down to your middle name." I was shocked and didn't know what to do. I called my mother to ask her what was going on. Her demeanor changed to one of seriousness, and she told me to stay where I was. Meanwhile, I contacted the private investigator and begged him for answers. He only asked me more irrelevant questions, like where I was born and my parents' names. When I mentioned that my mother was on her way to my apartment, the PI asked for her full name. When I provided it, he told me to leave my apartment immediately and come to his office before my mother arrived. As I rushed to grab my keys, my mother pulled into my driveway with a man I didn't recognize. He was wearing a winter jacket despite it being spring, and I felt like something was off. Before I could leave, the man pulled out a gun. I recognized it as my boyfriend's Glock and ran to my neighbor's yard, expecting to be shot. Thankfully, nothing happened, and I eventually ran into my boyfriend's car. However, there was another man in the passenger seat. It was the private investigator. He explained to me that he had a theory that my parents were involved in a kidnapping that took place a few states over. They did this because the police had suspected them of neglecting their infant daughter, and when she ended up perishing, They had to completely replace the child as to not get caught. My parents had never mistreated me in my life, so this all came to me as a shock. Of course, I denied it all at first. However, there was no reason for my mother to bring an armed stranger into my living space. We got the authorities involved and they excavated the backyard of my childhood home. They found the body of the child they had neglected. The child they had me replace. Several years have passed since then. I've done my best to avoid thinking about this situation. I have completely moved out of country, leaving everyone behind. My friends, my boyfriend and that private investigator. I have no idea of how deep this rabbit hole goes. I don't know how many connections my parents have had. I don't even know my father's role in all of this. It just feels all so overwhelming. I had to get it out there.
What was your most emotional moment? I came home at 1 a.m. to find my husband drinking whiskey with a complete stranger in our lounge. I'd been out after work with some colleagues. Absolutely exhausted, I'd finally made it back home, eager to fall into bed next to my husband, who I was certain would already be fast asleep. Instead, I walked in to find him sitting with some man who looked a bit like Andre Agassi when he had a shaved head and a goatee. What an odd scenario. Why was there a complete stranger in my house at 1 a.m. when I desperately wanted to go to bed? Out of respect for my husband and his newfound friend, I'd have to stay up and exchange pleasantries, which I was in no mood to do. They both looked up at me in awkward silence, Agassi holding his glass of whiskey inches from his mouth. "Hello," I said, hesitantly, waiting for some kind of introduction or explanation. They said nothing, just grinned at me like two idiots. I felt like I'd walked in on some secret meeting. "So? What's going on then?" I asked, politely. My husband, still grinning, said I made a new friend at the pub. "It's Andre Agassi." Very funny. I was now annoyed. It was late and I had to be up for work the next morning. This was no time for childish shenanigans. They carried on with their silly, evasive charade for a while longer. Frustrated, I announced I was going to bed. Agassi got up and sat next to me on the sofa. He looked at me intensely. It made me nervous. I really wanted to punch him. He reached into his back pocket, pulled out his wallet and fished in it for something. He pulled out a photo. "I'm not Andre Agassi, but you do know me." "Okay. The last time you saw me," he grinned, "I looked like this." He held up a small, black and white passport photo of my cousin, Ali, at age 5. I had not seen him or spoken to him since my childhood. At age 12, I'd left my entire family behind to escape the revolution in my country. My mum, 4 grandparents, 4 aunties, 3 uncles and 5 cousins. We were a tight-knit family. Always together. My parents were divorced, my father had custody, and he decided to take my brother and me to America, for our own safety. It was the right decision, but it meant having to say goodbye to the whole lot of them. It was hard. I was homesick for a long time and missed them all terribly. They would occasionally come to me in my dreams, where we'd be joyously reunited. I'd wake from those dreams in such a state. Happy, but tearful. Lost. Gradually though, the gulf between me and my old life grew wider and quieter. The letters and phone calls stopped. Eventually, as I delved into my new life on a different continent, they all became a distant memory, locked away in that box of sentimental items in the attic of my mind. They were characters from another life. A life that no longer existed. For nearly 2 decades, I had no family. I never spoke of them or to them. It was easier. Ali had been the baby of our family back then. A darling little angel. He once had a passport photo taken. He looked so cute in it. His expression was so serious, like someone facing the Spanish Inquisition. This photo became a favorite within our entire family. Everyone got a copy to keep on their fridge or in their wallet or scrapbook. I had one too, which I'd ended up taking with me when I left my country 20 years earlier. And now, here was this grown man, sitting on my sofa, holding up that very passport photo in front of my face. He had known that I would immediately recognize it. I didn't say a word. Not one. Instead, I buried my face in my hands and just sobbed. I cried and cried. My heart felt like it could explode. I can honestly say that, second to the birth of my son, it was the most emotional moment I've experienced. Ali in that little photo he was holding represented my old life, my entire family, my history. And here he was, sitting an inch away from me. Apparently, my husband had come home from work that afternoon to find a strange man with a rucksack sitting on our front step. Ali had got my address from another relative and had decided to come to the UK, where I now lived, and pay me a surprise visit. It was pre-mobile days, so my husband couldn't get in touch with me to tell me to hurry home. All they could do was wait for me to return. So, they went to the pub, drank too many whiskeys and concocted their Agassi ruse. When I'd finally stopped crying, we hugged and talked and reminisced the rest of the morning. Suddenly, there was a bridge connecting me to all of them again. They were all real once more, no longer a fairy tale or vague memory. I have since reunited with several more members of my family, including my mum. But none of them made me as emotional as Ali, because he was the first. He broke the dam. Update. A few people have urged me to add the passport photo, which with Ali's kind permission, I'm able to do.
I planted bamboo that has overrun my neighbor's property over a security light. About 4 years ago, I used to live in a nice hoa in a small town in Texas and enjoyed having only one neighbor over my backyard fence. The plot was about 2 acres, and the other side of the backyard butted up against a hay field. The stars were beautiful at night because there was virtually no light pollution. Until the neighbor decided to install an incredibly bright security light over their back porch, aimed right at my back patio and bedroom windows. I tried to ignore it at first and put shades in the bedroom, but out on the patio, it was like having a bright LED headlight in your face all night. I consulted the hoa about adding a privacy addition to my fence to increase its height, and they said no because it's already at the 8-foot maximum allowed height. They said there was nothing in the bylaws or whatever about bright lights, so there was nothing they could do. Diplomacy. So I hated for this to be the thing where we finally had a formal greeting after 3 years of back porch waves, but I walked over and rang the doorbell with $20. I politely explained how the light was causing the aforementioned nuisance and asked if there was any way I could convince him to point the light down or in a different direction, and I even offered to buy him a case of beer, for $20, out of goodwill and even a new motion sensing light. He seemed nice and agreed to point it down, but after waiting a month, nothing changed. I went back to have another polite conversation, and he said he had changed his mind and was going to leave it on every night and leave it pointed as is. The petty revenge. Needless to say, I was a bit upset that diplomacy failed and started figuring out how to win. If the military taught me anything, there are always ways to adapt and overcome. So I started researching fast-growing plants to create big privacy walls and reading through the hoa bylaws and city or state ordinances about what I could or couldn't plant and if there were any repercussions for encroachment across the property line. I quickly discovered that running bamboo, despite being very invasive, would grow super fast to make the neighbor's house and light disappear from view, and there was nothing on the HOA's, state's, or city's books to prevent me from planting it or cause legal recourse if it spread and grew on his side of the fence. The only thing he could do is cut anything that grew on his side of the line. So I pulled the trigger and planted a bunch of golden bamboo, which grows and spreads crazy fast in Texas and grows up to 20 feet tall. I didn't care if it took over the fence line because his house is 15 from the fence while mine is 50 yards away, so I planted a bunch right against the fence and only put root barriers on my side to prevent it spreading into my yard. Within 6 months, his house and light were gone from view, replaced by a pretty bamboo jungle row at the edge of my yard. Within a year, he complained it was growing into his yard via mailed letters, which went right into the trash with no response. He rang my doorbell once, and I looked at him through the window but just didn't answer the door. I unexpectedly sold the house and moved 2 years after planning for a career opportunity. It's been 2 years since I sold, and I just checked the property on Google Earth, and his entire backyard is bamboo.
There's something wrong with our Ring doorbell. There is motion at your front door. I've been seeing a lot more of these alerts on my phone over the last 2 days from our Ring doorbell. You can adjust how sensitive the camera is to movement, so you don't get as many false positives, and this was the first step I took. My wife and I have some bushes right by our front porch that sometimes trigger these alerts. I'd given up checking the actual video feed for the most part because of how often this was happening. Initially, adjusting the sensitivity settings for the doorbell seemed to solve the issue. I was relieved because all the false positives were draining the battery of the camera, and it was annoying having to bring it inside so frequently to recharge it. Recently, though, I started getting more alerts during the day at odd times. They'd stop around bedtime but picked up again in the early hours of the morning for some baffling reason. The last 2 mornings, roughly around 3 a.m., I received a flurry of alerts on my phone. When I checked the Ring app, the thumbnail image for the video feed was completely dark, and I couldn't make anything out. I checked the live feed, and it was the same. This is odd, because I always leave the porch light on at night, so I should have been able to see something. I grabbed my nightstand gun and went to investigate. Opening the door slightly, I peeked outside and realized I had, indeed, forgotten to leave the porch light on. I like having our porch well lit at night, as I feel that doing so is a deterrent to would-be thieves. I flicked it on and looked around, but didn't see anyone around, so I closed the door, locked it and went back to bed. This same thing happened again this morning. A flurry of motion alerts around 3 a.m. Even in my groggy state, I am self-aware enough to acknowledge how incredibly forgetful I am. I'm the guy who spends 10 minutes looking for the TV remote only to realize it has been in his hand the whole time. I rolled my eyes at myself, figuring I forgot to turn on the porch light again. To be safe, though, I clicked one of the alerts on my phone and was immediately startled by the thumbnail image the app presented to me. Staring back at me was a dark, blurry close-up image of a man's face. It filled the entire thumbnail, so his face must have been almost right up against the camera. As I processed what I was seeing, I noticed a couple of other details about the man's face. Even with the poor lighting, I could see enough of his face to tell that his eyes were very far apart. So much so that it bordered on unnatural. He also had the widest grin I've ever seen a person have, with way more teeth than I would have thought humanly possible. I was so unnerved by this that, even with my nightstand gun, I did not want to confront this guy. I clicked on the thumbnail in order to bring up the live feed, but the man appeared to be gone. I still couldn't make out much more of the image, though, so I hesitated for a moment, trying to decide whether to phone the police to be on the safe side or check things out myself. I like to err on the safe side, so I started to get up in order to step into the other room to phone the police so as not to wake my wife. She's a light sleeper, so the slight commotion woke her anyway, and she groggily asked me what I was doing. Not wanting to worry her, I simply said that I couldn't sleep, had remembered that I left the porch light off and that I just wanted to go turn it on. There was a pause, and what she said next made the color drain from my face. As she turned over to go back to sleep, she mumbled, "While you're at it, can you make sure to put the doorbell back up outside? I brought it in the other day to let it charge and forgot to put it back up." I felt sick as her words sank in. The odd timing of the motion alerts during the day had been the camera picking up our own movements as the device sat charging on the kitchen counter. But the ones in the early hours of the morning, that face staring into the camera, those had also been recorded inside our home. Another alert startled me out of me shock. "There is motion at your front door."
What's something you hate about being a man? I am 26 years old and I just got married to the girl I loved. 8 months into the marriage, I am depressed and on the verge of doing something disastrous but completely silent. My wife has been an extremely spoiled child even by her own declarations. Every month, she spends a large chunk of the salary on stuff that we eventually throw out in a week or two. If I protest, she threatens to leave me or tells me that I am not a man for not being able to provide basic amenities to her. Basic here includes dresses of brands I can't pronounce and gift items and decorative stuff that we have little place in the house to keep. I earn decently, or that's what I thought. Every single day, she asks me to do better at my job and earn more money. If I don't earn more money, then what sort of a man am I? This is what she believes. She texts me constantly when I am working and asks me to come back home as early as possible. That affects work and in turn, the money. But if I have to stay back for longer hours and work harder, we get into fights that last for days. She threatens to kill herself. She keeps posting feminism-based messages on Facebook and is an avowed believer of equality. At home, she tells me that I should take care of the house and see how tough that is, which is what I have been doing for 3 months now. I also do all her work at her workplace. She works in accounts and I find the time to do her balance sheets every day. She proudly proclaims to her friends that she works and takes care of the house all by herself, but I know better. Since my mother is a heart patient, my father passed away 7 years ago, she has told me that ending this marriage will be her end. I must continue. Every single day, we discuss about where she should go and shop, what she should wear, where I must take her to lighten her mood since the household work makes her miserable. If I express one opinion about where we should eat or what we should do, she tells me please think about me too. It's not about you all the time. If I tell her that can I bring my mother to take care of her at least for a few days, she tells me I don't have time for useless people. Her family comes over and stays for days on end, which is a decent expense for me that makes things worse later on. If I protest, the threat is there and my mom is told about her son's incapability. She believes it and reprimands me and asks me to work on myself. I have stopped protesting, stopped speaking, stopped thinking. If I think and my face twitches, she tells me, "What was that? Why did you look at me like that? Are you doing me a favor by being nice to me? Do you know I could have married anybody? I sleep after her and wake up before her to prepare her first cup of coffee. I cook on most days since the last 3 months. I will cook when I feel like. My father has always kept me like a queen. It's time you did that too. I work constantly and barely get time to do anything else." At night, she tells me, "I think you are failing as a husband. I think you don't realize how lucky you are. I hope you grow up and start valuing me." This is not a recent happening. I am writing about 8 odd months here. So what sucks about being a man? I cannot express my anger in this situation without being called a wuss. I tried exploring some legal options to end this charade, but it won't end well for me, and with my mom undergoing her treatment, I won't be able to afford it. I have told by my wife that I harass her or that I am like other men that rape women. If I don't reach home within the time she specifies, she constantly complains about me to her friends, about how much of an idiot I am. She also discusses my sexuality with her friends and proudly tells me about it. Imagine if I did stuff like that? Yet, all that talk passes off as allowable coffee conversation. I can never claim that I cooked something or kept the house clean. No extra points for managing work in the house. But for her, that's very commendable as she is a woman and has to battle inequality every day. For me, all this stuff must be easy as I am privileged. I know feminism is a good thing and it is important to win the war for equal rights for women. It is very much the need of the hour. But my battle is lost. I will always smile and pretend things are okay, while I am dying inside. Behind you. I have only been driving for a year. I have never had to replace a broken part in my car. I have never even had my car break down. I've only ever changed my wiper fluid and filled my car up with gas. I mean, tonight was like any other night, was doing my regular routine of going to the gym, stopping at a gas station to grab a protein shake, and heading home to play video games. I take this dark, rural road to get home from the gym. Aside from one intersection with a flashing red light and the odd house, the road is bleak and empty. I was on my way home listening to music when my car died. It was instant. Everything went dark. I was confused. I thought that my engine would at least start to sputter before my car died. I ended up calling my brother to let him know that I needed a jump, and that he'd be here in 10 minutes. I decided, out of fear of animals, that I would lock myself in my car and distract myself on my phone until my brother arrived. I looked around at the darkness surrounding me. It was creepy. It was like I was in a tub of black paint, not a speck of light in sight. Not long after starting to watch a video on my phone, I heard a light tapping sound coming from my roof. Tap, tap, tap. Now, I thought it could be some sort of tree branch tapping my car, as I was right beside the entrance to a forest with overhanging trees, but that is when I realized the tapping was more methodical. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. Pause. I wondered if maybe an animal had gotten onto my roof, and decided to turn on my phone's flashlight and open my door to check my roof, and sure enough it was empty. What made me feel uneasy, though, was that none of the trees near my car could reach the roof of it. I sat back into my car when I decided to call my brother to see where he was. "I'm 5 minutes away, man, stop calling me." I hung up and opened Instagram and started scrolling. As time went on, I realized it had been 30 minutes since I had called him. I decided to call him again, and I got the same answer. "I'm 5 minutes away, man, stop calling me." Before I could even ask anything else, he had hung up. This couldn't be possible. It was 10 minutes from my house to this location, and he'd been driving for nearly 45 minutes. My brother is normally lazy, but he wouldn't lie about having left the house when I'm in a situation like this. That's when I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. This time it sounded like it was on the window, and so I scanned the windows and saw nothing. That was until I checked the rear view mirror. A dark figure filled the glass, and shining my phone's flashlight on it revealed its horrible features. Pale skin, milky white eyes devoid of any color, boasting an ear-to-ear smile. I let out a scream, and that's when it disappeared from my back windshield. I called my brother a third time and yelled, "Where the fuck are you? I'm 5 minutes away, man, stop calling me." And the phone hung up. I realized that the expression was the same each time. I decided to call back again, but this time look at my phone, and to my surprise when I clicked call under my brother's contact name, and that's when I realized what my phone said. Call failed. And I heard it. I'm 5 minutes away, man, stop calling me. I realized though, it wasn't coming from my phone, but I was actually hearing it in my ear. I slowly turned around, and that's when I saw it, this thing behind me, staring me in the eyes with a blood-curdling smile. He then repeated it in my brother's voice. I'm here. I gripped the door handle and shoved it open, falling into the road. It was just then when the darkness disappeared and was taken over by light. I looked towards the light source and saw my brother's car pulling up behind mine. I could hear my heartbeat thumping in my ears as my vision came in and out, a vignette surrounding what I could see. What the fuck are you doing? He said, getting out of his car laughing. WHA what? I screamed, looking into my backseat. It was empty. What's wrong? My brother asked, more serious now. But there was someone in my backseat, I said, panicking. My brother retreated to his car and grabbed his gun from his glove box. I checked my phone, and to my dismay, it was only 10 minutes after I called him, and there was only one call in my call history. Just at that time, my brother's car turned off, the darkness coming back. What the fuck? I heard him say. He flashed his phone flashlight on my back windshield. A smiling face drawn crudely in a thick red substance, I could assume was blood, and small writing underneath reading. Behind you. Update, I, 35M, was incarcerated and lost touch with 33F. I contacted her, and she responded. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who offered advice or kind words. I had spent so long feeling ashamed about my situation and expecting most people to react very negatively if they knew. I had barely discussed it with anyone before, except my dad and people whose job it is to help me, lawyers, therapists, etc., and I was very surprised to be met with so much compassion from a bunch of complete strangers. Thank you, truly. Several people asked for an update, and that's the least I can do in return. I sent Daria a message the evening after I made my post. It was something like, I don't mean to intrude, but I wanted to say hello and thought I would give you my new contact information in case you ever felt like getting in touch. If not, that's completely fine too. I left her my mobile number and email address, wished her well, and that was that. I knew it might be a while before she responded, if she responded at all. So I tried to put it out of my mind. Early Monday morning, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number from the country where Daria lives. Who else would ever be calling me from there? I panicked a little bit, but I managed to answer in time. She asked a few times if it was really me, and I couldn't tell if she was laughing or crying. At first, she called me by the very affectionate version of my name she used to use. But then she quickly apologized and corrected herself, which broke my heart a little bit. It was an awkward phone call, but not in a bad way. I was extremely nervous, and it seemed like she was too. But happy, too. Some of you mentioned that Daria would want to know that I was safe, and this was more true than I could have guessed. Because unrest in my country increased a lot during the last year I was in prison, she was afraid that they would decide to quietly kill me rather than let me go. There are documented cases of other prisoners like me having met very suspicious ends in the months before my release, so it wasn't a totally unreasonable worry. She also said she repeatedly tried to send me parcels of supplies and put money on my commissary account, but her attempts were rejected without explanation. After my sentencing, I was not allowed to receive correspondence or have a commissary account at all because of the classification of my crimes, so she was forced to give up. She told me this as an apology, as if I would have been disappointed with her for not helping me more. I had no idea she had done any of that. I do know that it was not a safe thing for her to do, and I feel terrible that she put herself at risk trying to make me a little more comfortable. She didn't seem to want to talk about what happened any more than that, and so we didn't. We changed the subject to more lighthearted things. Our jobs, the cities where we live, how my dad is adapting to a new country, etc. When she arrived at work and had to end the phone call, she asked if I wanted to continue talking through a messaging app. Obviously, I said yes and downloaded it immediately. We sent messages throughout the day, and she even interrupted her commute home to send me a picture of a restaurant modeled after one of my favorite books, just because she thought I would like it. She told me that she thought of me every time she saw it, but unfortunately, the restaurant itself was not so good. I was afraid she wouldn't remember me, but she even remembers the things I like to read. She remembers a lot of little things, even stuff I forgot. We have been sending messages back and forth ever since and talking on the phone after I finish work at night, until she gets too sleepy. Sometimes it feels like I'm 24 and she's texting me from a few blocks away, as if the next thing she might ask is what's for dinner. Other times, it seems like we're trying to bring dead versions of ourselves back to life in order to avoid acknowledging what we've lost. She seems a lot more timid than she used to, more passive, which I suppose makes sense. Sometimes I worry about how much I've changed and that maybe she won't find anything left in me that's worthy of her. But if I could express in words what it feels like to hear her laugh, I could explain that there's also a lot that we know very well. She hasn't lost her kindness, her warmth, or her empathy. She still cares about me, and I still care about her. I know that rebuilding a friendship after all that's happened will take lots of patience, and I have plenty to spare. I'm just happy to have the chance to get to know her again. This morning, Daria asked if I wanted to have a video call sometime this weekend. I agreed, but I'm ashamed to admit that as much as I want to see her, I'm very nervous. I look so different than she would remember. My jaw is messed up, and I have the teeth of a hockey player. Fortunately, I will qualify for healthcare insurance soon and be able to have it fixed. I lost weight that I haven't put back on, and I see an old man in the mirror. I'm also worried that I will get very emotional when I see her and embarrass myself that way. I don't really cry in front of people. I'm not used to it, and this doesn't seem like a good occasion to start. Aside from not wanting to appear pitiful, I don't want her to feel forced to comfort me. If anyone has some advice on how to handle this, it would be much appreciated. Overall, this week could not have gone better, and I am extremely grateful to everyone who gave me the little push of courage I needed to send her that message. 1,000 times, thank you. Edit, just to clarify, she doesn't have a husband or kids. As I said in my first post, I only considered contacting her because there was no evidence of a partner on her social media. But I understand that my first post wasn't visible for a while, so I can see why that may not have been obvious. Sorry for the confusion.
What unexpected habits and practices did you encounter from your foreign spouse? My foreign spouse is a Holocaust survivor from Bedtime, Poland. When he started to court me, Michael would show up at the front door with a tin of sardines and a packet of crackers. Because he has been slowly starved until he weighed 78 pounds during 5 years as a slave laborer for the Nazis from age 13 to 17, he could not think of a better courtship gift. My heart became a well of sadness as I looked into his merry, sparkling blue eyes at this little teddy bear of a man who had been so abused. He never grew bigger than a 13-year-old because of malnutrition and starvation. I thought he was probably a stuffy German Jew named Yeki when I met him. Then a bit of peppy music played on my little radio. He crossed his arms, out came a short leg, and he danced a wild Hasidic dance all around the little kitchen. He never wanted pity, and I swear he seemed to grow bristles if someone looked at him pityingly. He was constantly worried that there would be no source of water. Every night before we went to bed, he filled a glass with water and left it on the sink counter. He would never discard clothing. He became a physician but always kept a needle and thread about him. I'd find him sitting alone and darning his socks from time to time. He became agitated if I threw away food. We had to discuss every bit of garbage to see if it could come in handy before sending it to the trash. Then he would look sadly at the filled can, saying, "What waste." When he ate chicken, he left the chicken bone so clean that it looked polished. He adored my cooking in a way that begged belief. Eating with him was almost a holy experience. I was a German Shepherd dog fancier, but I could not keep a dog after we married as he was deathly afraid of them, having seen German Shepherds used to kill prisoners. He would take a bit of his favorite food and wrap it very tightly in such a way that it could be carried in a pocket, just in case. He was the worst driver I ever met, and no one would let him drive. He didn't know why. He cried out in Yiddish and Polish in his sleep, yelling and moaning. When awake, he never spoke Polish. He would go outside in a light shirt and pants when it was 17 degrees out and putter in the yard for hours. I'd look out at the white, icy landscape, and my heart would break. He led the life of a scholar at home in the library I set up for him in his bedroom. Saturdays were wonderful, as work would cease and we would discuss every topic under the sun. Sometimes we stay overnight in a B&B with other Jews and enjoy an Orthodox Sabbath. Honestly, I can say it was better than a vacation. Michael needed to be with his people as his family had been murdered in Bedtime, and he couldn't live apart from his people, so we always belonged to a synagogue. When he walked in, everyone deferred to him and his intellect. He spoke 5 languages. I do not think he even noticed. I realized I was married to a prince of sorts. It was as though a high-up niche magically appeared in a stratified society, and he fit in it, even though there was no discussion or invitation. He understood the service better than the rabbi did. He would sing away and sound like a bee humming. After the first visit to what became our synagogue, he said, "You don't have a blood donation program." He had been saved from death after the Holocaust ended by blood transfusions. He was so starved. When the Sabbath ended, I noticed him calling members of the synagogue and telling them to appear at 10 a.m. the next Sunday to give blood. Sure enough, I drove him, to the synagogue the next Sunday, and the place was packed with Jews ready to give blood. The poor little nurse was yelling, "In line, get in line." Everyone was talking at once, ignoring her instructions. She finally gave up and started laying out her equipment, and all of them walked over and lined up. When he was dying, he said something unthinkable for a Jew. He said, "I saw God's face, and it was covered with wonders. How I have missed you all these years, my dear friend."
As a babysitter, what was your okay? That's the last time I babysit for this family moment. I was asked to babysit for a friend's relative. I was told that I would be looking after a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they were calm, easy kids. I said, "Sure, no problem." Famous last words. I get there, and the mom just hauls her ass out the door, yelling at me over her shoulder that she would be back in 5 hours. Now here comes the WTF moment. Remember how I mentioned I was told there were 2 children? Yeah, no, there was not. In fact, there were 5 times as many children. Yes, you read that right. That woman took off and never said a word about the fact that there were more of them, leaving me to look after 10 fucking children. Several sets of twins, all under the age of 7. There were 3 or 4 sets of twins, and they were like 10 to 11 months apart, and then there were the babies. Honestly, I can't remember anything but the rage and anger I felt. So there I was, stuck with 10 children. I tried calling the mother, but she kept sending me to voicemail. I was so angry, I was ready to call children's services. The children were all around, screaming for whatever reason. So I said, fuck it, I'm in it to win it. I went to make them something to eat. I changed the diapered ones, pottied the older ones, and then let them go play in the backyard for a while. I was still seething with anger over the blatant deception as I cleaned up the kitchen. But it gets better. No, it doesn't. 5 hours later. No mom. Okay, a few minutes late. No big deal, right? You know that isn't the case, or I wouldn't be telling my story. I tend to the children, toileted and changed them, fed them, baths, and off to bed. It's now almost 9 p.m. Mother is still not back. I'm furious and incensed at this point and beyond. I keep calling the mother, and my calls go unanswered. Pissed, I call my friend and tell her to call her relative and tell her to call me or come home because I am beyond pissed at being deceived this way. My mother never came back that night, so the next day, I'm at it again. I call everyone in the family, including my friend. No answer. So I said fuck it and called the police. I explained the situation, and they said they would send someone. Nothing. I spent the next day looking after a tribe called Quest and could get no one to relieve me. I was so angry, I couldn't see straight. These children were just a handful. I remember screaming at them to sit down somewhere, and the neighbor heard and came over. I explained the situation to the neighbor. What the neighbor said next shocked me. "Oh, she does this all the time," said the neighbor. "She lies about how many kids she has because no one would ever agree to look after that many children." The neighbor glanced at me. "You know, she might not come back for a few days," they said. "She does this so much, no one will watch her children anymore." I couldn't say a word. I ended up stuck with these children for nearly 5 days. I called the police and children's services and made it clear that either they send someone to deal with the situation or I am leaving and the children are on their own. I didn't really mean that. I was just angry that no one is helping me, and I am sick and tired of being there with them. So after 10 minutes passed forever, a cop finally drags their ass over and makes an appearance. There was this lady with them, and they came in to talk to me. In the meantime, I was still tending to children. It wasn't their fault. It wasn't until the children were being loaded into a van that their mother finally decided to make an appearance. She saw the police cruiser and the van and literally freaked out, screaming at them to stop. They ignored her and kept loading the children into the van. I stormed over to where the mother was, pissed and ready to kick her ass. "What the fuck is wrong with you?" I shouted at her. "I've been stuck here with your children for damn near 5 days when you said you would be back in 5 hours. And you can bet your ass you will be paying me every single dime I'm entitled to for sticking me with 10 fucking kids for this long." You didn't say one word about the other children. You ignored my calls for nearly 5 days and just disappeared. I'm not paying you shit. The mother screamed at me. You called the fucking cops to take my children. No, I called because you fucking abandoned them, I shouted back. Just then, a black car pulled into the driveway where we were arguing. It was the husband. He came over to ask what was going on. He was out of town on a business trip, and I told him. The look on his face, oh man. He pulled his wife into the house. You could have heard him down the street even if you were deaf in both ears. He came back out and approached me. Shannon, I want to apologize for the situation. I was out of town for work and didn't know about this, he said. He then handed me a nice wad of cash, thanked me for staying with his children, and I turned to leave. As I went to my car, I turned back and yelled at her. There isn't a snowball's chance in the 7th circle of hell I'm ever watching your children again. You told me there were only 2 and ended up looking for 10. You said you would be back in 5 hours, and you were gone for 5 days. I didn't even stop to think about how that shit affected me and anything else I had going on. Fuck you. I got in my car and left. Because of that selfish bitch, I nearly lost my job. Luckily, I was able to get the responding officer to explain the situation. My parents had my children and were okay when I explained what happened. And that's not even the fucked up part. The fucked up part is that my so-called friend took her relative's side and ended our friendship. They tried to press charges against me for child endangerment and spread nasty rumors about me. The joke was on them in the end. I cut ties with my former friend, her relative ended up getting a divorce, and her husband took the children. And yes, they blamed me for all that. I don't know what happened to them after that. I cut all of them out of my life. Fuck that bitch. Do you know any gold diggers? What's your story? My mother. She said to my face she wants to marry rich and tried to teach me how to seduce a rich man instead of earning my way. She tried her damnedest to put me through gold digging school as a child. Luckily, none of the lessons really stuck around. When mom left my father after a particularly nasty divorce, she bounced back fast. The divorce case in court was still happening when she started dating Ken. Gold digger rule number 1. Look for a fancy car. So Ken had a Corvette ZR1. Perfect condition. I could tell I was an afterthought during all this, since whenever I absolutely had to go somewhere, Ken and my mother would just put me in the trunk of this car. Luckily, they have very nice windows. They are pretty cramped, however. Here was the problem with Ken. Ken didn't want kids. Ken definitely didn't want me. My mother had him wrapped around her finger, but he was my worst nightmare. I won't go into the details, but he aimed guns at me, threw me downstairs, put me through hard labor, and at the end of the day I slept on an exercise bench until I was given a cot in the workout room for the year or 2 years we stayed there. I believe I was 6. Gold digger rule number 2. You don't have to like them, you just have to make them think you do. A while later, we had a guy over at the apartment a lot. I was a bit older and got the gist of what was going on. He wasn't much to look at, but he got me a portable DVD player and all of the Lord of the Rings movies, then actually wanted to spend time with me. I hoped beyond hope that this was the one. I really liked this guy. He happened to overhear me telling mom how much I loved the gifts while watching my new TV. He also overheard mom scoff and say, "He's not here to amuse you. He's here because he pays the bills." That was the last time I saw him. Honestly, I genuinely missed that one. Gold digger rule number 3. Drugs may also count as currency. The shorter-lived guys were all over the place. I'm still kind of in disbelief that my mom would take me over to these houses, for real. Some of them were really weird. There's a guy in Florida who has an entire house built out of beer cans stacked up against his walls. It was really cool for a kid, but none of the guys really wanted anything to do with me. I just sat on the couch like a good kid, kept my damn mouth shut, and waited for mom to get her fix of whatever and finish her romp. The quicker she got what she was after, the quicker I could go home. Gold digger rule number 4. Get a guy with an extra vehicle. That way, you don't have to buy yourself a car. This guy was something else. He was really trying to win mom over. To the point where we moved in with him. He bought me a slim PS2, and he gave mom a car that she could use. What he didn't tell her was that his car was his ex's, and when she found out where and what the car was being used for, she stole it back, legally. She also stole everything of value to me, since it was unfortunately in my book bag. In the back of the damn car. At the end of the day, the guy got tired of mom's or my shit. He kicked us out. Of course, mom blamed me. I don't know whose fault it was. I was getting really tired of this though. Gold digger rule number 5. Keep the details to yourself. This is actually my rule, and I'll tell you why. The last guy I care to explain was weird. He hired a 13-year-old to build a company website for him, then got very upset when some of the HTML wasn't professional standard. Honestly, I did my best. This guy put me to work though, and I resented every minute of it. I basically functioned as an on-call secretary for his business, while he and my mother drank on the patio. I'd do emails, screen calls, check information for clients, and somehow have to find time to build this damn website with no help. That's not why he's a problem though. See, one night my mother came home, screaming, with a perfect set of teeth in her chest. They were bleeding, and she was bruised in the face. Mom said that he attacked her. I called the guy and bitched him out as well as a 13-year-old can. Cops couldn't do anything because they were drunk, and apparently there's a claim that it was self-inflicted. At the time I didn't believe it. Now? Possibly. When Mom's next squeeze came into the picture, he made the mistake of purchasing a kid a lot of fireworks for the 4th of July. Let's just say the guy who allegedly bit my mom had to replace a portion of his roof. As far as my current relationship with her, it's bad. She lives in Maryland now, and she's dating a guy named Dave. I've never met him, but she's claimed for a few years that he's verbally and psychologically abusive. She says she's called the cops up there countless times, and has tried to kick him out, but he just won't leave. I offered to send help up there, and she refused. Why? You might think I'm being unfair, but that brings me to my final rule. Gold digger rule number 6, he can get away with anything, as long as you don't have to lift a finger. Regardless of if she's in trouble or not, she's refused my help multiple times. It's been years. I wash my hands of it. Oh, and by the way, she absolutely 100% blames me for Ken. Joke's on her to be real. I married flat broke. Couldn't be happier. What is the saddest scene you have ever seen in an ER? Many years ago, before illegal drugs became the problem they are today, I had a 15-year-old girl call 911 because she had intentionally attempted to overdose, with intent to die, both for herself and her 2-year-old brother. Wow. She fortunately called 911 because she realized while she didn't want to live, it was not fair to take her baby brother's life too. She actually didn't do any harm to either of them, thank goodness. What was most important was why she felt this was the best option. Obviously, the ambulance responded along with multiple police. The girl had attempted murder, so this was going to be thoroughly investigated. They all left me pretty much to my job while taking care of the girl. Another nurse took the baby brother to a separate area of the ER for care. The police could not track down either parent. While caring for the teen, I started to get some info about why. Long story short, both parents were drug addicts and neglectful and abusive to the 2 children. There was no food in the house, a house that was eventually deemed uninhabitable due to disrepair and filth. The children were not allowed outside or to be seen by anyone. The girl had reached her limit and just plain wanted out. Killing herself seemed her only option. She tried to kill her brother because she was afraid of what would happen to him if she wasn't there to protect him. I relayed her story to the police, who took it to the next level. Their investigation revealed frequent contact with Dad. The children were safe in the ER, so the police went seeking Dad. Mom showed up shortly after, and, in my entire 36 years as an RN, I have never seen anyone so strung out still alive. She was a stick figure with bruises everywhere we could see. Constantly picking at herself, screaming things randomly, and who knows when she had a bath. The most standout thing was her eyes. I've only seen this one time, and it was hers. Her eyes literally looked like her lids had turned inside out, with the bright red inner lids showing. We had to have security to keep her out of the ER back because she kept trying to sneak in. She called her hubby from the lobby payphone, and I heard her say, "The little bitch turned us in." I notified the police of Mom's condition and her call to Dad. They hadn't located Dad yet, but they came and removed Mom from our ER to their holding cell. They stuck around for a bit hoping Dad would show. Normally, my shift ended at 11 p.m. Needless to say, I had lots of paperwork between the kids, the police, and DCFS, Child Services, to complete. I didn't get out until almost 3 a.m. Normally I walk out with coworkers, but I was alone now. I made the smart move and asked 2 EMTs, who had dropped off a patient, to walk me out. One was one of the most muscular men I've ever seen. We were walking down the ramp, with cars parked on either side, to the bottom where the employee parking lot was. Suddenly we saw movement a few cars further down. Dad and several of his friends were waiting for me. They were armed with baseball bats, tire irons, chains. Fortunately, no one had a gun. The biggest fireman threw me over his shoulder and we took off up the ramp to the ER. We got in through the ambulance entrance and hit the panic button. The panic button locked down the entire ER and went directly to the 911 dispatch center. In moments we had a dozen cop cars on the ramp. Dad and his buddies were still there trying to get into the ER. Every one of them was arrested. They all were charged with something very serious relating to threatening the life of an ER nurse and 2 EMTs. We all testified in court and they went away for many years. As for the teen girl and her baby brother, they were in the hospital for about 3 days, mainly for their safety. DCFS did their investigation and it was determined to not charge the 15-year-old with anything. Both children were removed from the home, which really didn't exist anymore anyway. A family member wanted to take the children, but it was determined that the children would not be safe there. I'm not sure where they ended up. I've thought of them both over the years. I am not religious, but I still say a prayer for them. It's the only thing I can do for them. I also say one for the firefighter I believe saved my life that night. Teachers, has any student ever tried to bribe you? What happened? This happened on Tuesday. The student is or was a woman. Let's call her S. S isn't very good at anything. She was allowed into the staff kitchen to make some tea for the practice exams. The reason for this is that she had a very privileged life with servants and no need to work due to Daddy's money. Daddy passed away and was in tons of debt, so there was no inheritance. So she thought I'd go to college to get an education while I figured it out. S is extremely outspoken and interrupts me constantly. She also never does her homework. All of my classmates know that it is an exam-only module where 100% of the marks come from a final exam. I've written tons of notes in her personal records, well, I type them, as they're not electronic, about how she doesn't do her homework and how I think she will fail. She thinks homework is beneath her too. I gave her and the rest of the class the practice exam. The students start working furiously, as the time limit is very tight. She sits there and stares at it. I send the students out for break after 2 hours and mark furiously in the hour-long lunch break. All but 2 people have passed the practice exam. S and another student who got 2 insta-fail questions wrong. I SMS message each of the students to come see me one by one, and I give them feedback and what to work on. It goes well for all the students. They say, thank you, and I give them some reading to do to buff up on the areas they needed more marks in and note it for Tuesday next week for a workshop class. At the very end, S had scored 0 marks. She came into the faculty room and immediately started to make excuses about her performance. I couldn't get a word in for about 20 minutes. My colleague at his desk puts on his headphones and cranks up the volume. I can hear the tinny sounds across the room. I finally get a word in and say that is all irrelevant and that the exam soon isn't enough time to sort out her weaknesses as the gap in knowledge is just far too large. I say to her, you can do the lower level exam instead, which she might have a chance at. She says, no, I need it for my job. I said what job, and she said I don't know. So how do you know you need it? My friend said I needed it, and your friend does too. She's just somebody I know from church who doesn't work. She's getting angry now, and I'm pressing the silent security button in my pocket. She is suddenly very quiet and says she'll do anything to pass. I say it's pointless because it's an externally marked module, and I don't get to see the exam papers. I can only infer what might be on the exam papers from old papers. She says I can't do that, and I have to help her, as in cheat, in the exam to help her pass. I'm not even going to be in the same county when the exam happens because I'm at a conference. Security quietly makes their way into the faculty office, and she says I'll do anything and says I can have a night with her, and that I can do anything I please to her body. I was stunned. I ask her to leave and remind her of the exam soon. Security walks her out of the building. I turn to my colleague and ask him if he saw that, right? He says yes, and we go into cover our asses mode. I get the SD cards out of the cameras I have in my office. They're car dash cameras, and back them up and upload them to several secure locations. I also go to IT admin and ask them to preserve the CCTV of my office. I then write a report to my boss detailing a potential false allegation. I have a horrible feeling that on Monday there will be a complaint against me and my colleague. We have tons of video evidence and witnesses from the security guards, too. I will probably be put on a few days of administrative leave, so I'm planning to go fishing at a lake nearby for a few days. It has to go through a process that assumes we're guilty and then gets cleared after going through multiple reviews. I hate it when that happens. Do you regret your marriage, and why? I used to. Mine was an arranged marriage, like most of the Indians. Before marriage I spoke to her only a couple of times, because our marriage date was 3 months after we met formally and also we both were busy with work and preparation for the big day. On our big night, it was 2 strangers in a room. I knew more about my watchman than my wife. We didn't do anything on that night, since we were strangers and very tired of the long rituals from our marriage. Couple of months after marriage was suffocating for both of us. We tried to change for each other but it made it worse. There were a lot of differences between us. She was an extrovert, I am an introvert. I have less friends, she had a ton of them. She will be in phone most of the time. I rarely make calls and only calls I get is from my parents and more than them the credit card people. I like staying indoors. She liked going out and shopping. I hate shopping. I like to be with my family and relatives. She spends her time with friends and hates spending time with the relatives. She is a coffee person. Whenever she is free one can find a coffee mug in her hand. I don't drink coffee or tea. I have a kind of OCD where I don't have any unread mails or messages even I open those spam/ad mails. Once I happened to have a glimpse of her office laptop screen and she had 500 plus unread mails. She liked to read a lot. She hasn't seen the GOT series but read all the books. Most of the time in the weekend whenever she is in home I can find her in the balcony of our room reading something. I on the other hand don't like to read much. Weekends I'll be on my bed with laptop on my chest binge watching anything and everything. I am very lazy, she is very active. She loved driving, be it car or bike. Me on the other hand still don't know how to drive a bike. She spends a lot and I am kind of a savings person who rolls his toothpaste tube till there is no toothpaste left. She travel to office in the cab, I take the bus. She has a very good dressing sense. I just need a shirt and a pant and I'll manage till it tears if I have to. But I still try to dress well because of char log, society, kia kete hai. She is like fuck them who cares, it's my life attitude. I never get into fight, because it's a waste of time and energy even when it is not my fault. She'll fight if someone wrongs her. I hate cooking but love to clean. I always want everything in order. She hate cleaning. She is the mess maker in the house, and used to cook food better than my mom. She loved dogs and I hate those monsters. I had a bad history with dogs. She is a fitness freak. She eats healthy, goes to gym every day and also good at sports. I go to gym whenever I feel like my stomach is getting big, eats whatever that is considered food. I am also good at sports that I play in my Xbox. And the main thing is she is vegetarian and I am not. I eat chicken every day. All this difference may feel trivial or small, even we thought we can handle, but it was not for us. We tried to change for each other but it felt like suffocating trying to be someone we are not. This caused frustration and stress in our life. Every day we were unhappy. Marriage was turning to be a prison for us. Only thing we had in common is that we both thought our marriage is suffering and both didn't want that to happen. Sometime we used to argue and fight because of this. I regret marrying her. One day we stopped trying to change for each other and we stayed the way we want. It was like staying with a roommate. We did what we like and didn't expect anything from other. After this, the suffocation was no more. We could breathe again. In time, we kind of got used to each other. 6 months down the lane, I got an offer to work abroad for 6 months for a project. She was happy for me and I left. I never thought that I would miss her, but I did. I missed her talking to her friends over the phone, missed her food, no one was there to make mess. When I get back from work no one would be there in the house. Every day I used to call her. Call would last for 10 to 15 minutes with basic hi, how are you? How's work? How's everyone there? What's going on? Every day I used to call her at the same time. She used to avoid calls from others during this time. I would be worried if she didn't pick up the call. Then I used to call my parents to check in on her. I missed her a lot. I realized I am in love with her and I thought it's only from my end and she doesn't feel the same about me. So I kept quit. I was about to return to India. I informed her the same. My flight was supposed to reach around 2 a.m. in the morning, so told her that not to wait for me, since I had a key with me. I reached around 2:30 a.m. When I came out of the airport, I was surprised to see her waiting for me outside the airport. Her face lit up like a Christmas tree when she saw me. She came near me. I could see her eyes filled with tear and a big smile on her face. I knew then that she also loved me. She hugged me and said she missed me. Now I don't regret my marriage. She is the perfect one for me. We didn't expect change for each other. Just love the way we are. I only wish that we should have spent some time together before marriage so that we didn't go through what we went during our initial days. I have the worst coworker ever. To start us off. EFFU, Alan. Hard. Working with you these past 7 years has been terrible. You are a terrible coworker and the entire organization thinks so. Do you know how hard it is to induce the scorn of nearly 300 employees? Pretty effing hard. But you did it. What exactly is it that you do? I know that you lurk around our office like you think you are important, drifting into conversations like you have business there. You don't. We will let you know when something pertains to you. Promise. You float into meetings you aren't invited to and steal the extra lunches. FCK you for that. I take those extra lunches downstairs to the interns, who can use all the help they can get since they are working for free, and Will, whose entire paycheck, Nearly, goes to pay for medical treatment for his disabled child. FCKU for taking their lunches when you make triple their salaries. What in the hell are you even doing at the meetings? You have been told repeatedly that you aren't to invite yourself to them, but you still do. Our CEO is a man who loves to hand out second chances to you because you did that one spectacular thing 7 years ago when you first started. OMG, you totally brought us a supporter. I will admit that it was much needed. But when he turned his back on our organization 4 years ago because of you, you should have been fired. Now our non-profit is barely scraping by because you are too lazy to go out and do your actual job. You have one job, Alan. One F-king job. How dare you go into my office and log on to my computer when I wasn't there? You don't think I know? I do. FCKU. You don't even work in my building. You work in the office across town. Why in the hell are you even over here? You didn't think I would report you to HR, did you? I did. They were appalled. It is part of the reason you are under review now. I recently got a lock installed on my office door. Good luck getting in now. What the hell were you looking for anyway? Also, FCKU for calling me repeatedly while I was on maternity leave for things that weren't emergencies. Debbie was F-king handling my stuff while I was out. You got the F-king email I sent out regarding it because you replied to it. I don't even deal with anything you would need to contact me about anyway. Do you have a copy of the report from last year? You said in one voicemail I received shortly after giving birth. No, I don't F-king have a copy of the report from last year because I don't handle the reports. I don't F-king handle the reports. You aren't new. You know this. The second and third calls, I was still in the hospital, about how the break room was out of paper towels was just F-king mean. Coming back after maternity leave to 200-something emails from you was wonderful. I didn't answer them because you don't need that information. It isn't even your job to know that information. FCKU, Alan. FCKU and how you take Carrie's parking spot when you visit our location even though you know she has to park there because of her recent surgery. She had F-king cancer, Alan. Also, how dare you come to my baby work shower, that was after F-king hours, and eat the majority of my awesome cake. That was my cake. No one invited you. How do you even find out about it? You don't even work in our office. Did you just decide to stay until 7 p.m. one day at the office you don't work at for some reason? You just stumbled into my closed office with that stupid look on your face and said, look, cake, FCKU, Alan. I was pregnant and I was going to eat that cake. I said one piece, Alan. Not the whole rest of the cake. You really hurt Noah's feelings when you made fun of the way he speaks. He has a F-king speech impediment, you a-hole. Not to mention you work for a F-king non-profit whose job it is to help people like Noah. Tomorrow you have a review with the board and the CEO to determine whether the department you run is up to standards. I hope you fail. It sickens me to think that because the jobs of the individuals with disabilities who work at your location depends on your success, but I can't help but delight in the fact that you are failing. I will dance, Alan. I will dance and I will celebrate with cake, my cake, not yours, quietly and alone, when they pull your expense records and find that you are mismanaging funds, and finally fire you. F you, Alan. You are the only thing I hate about my job. Update, I made a joke and my husband stormed off. Hey Reddit, again. I posted here earlier about how my husband left after I told him a dumb joke. You can find it here. I followed the advice I got and kept my distance. You all had me really pondering about how much of my relationship was the butterflies and kittens I thought it was. I still firmly believe that everything was absolutely perfect before it happened. But oh well, I have my opinions. So you guys were right about some things and wrong about some things. For those of you saying that the lotion thing had nothing to do with it, you were kinda wrong. But for the people who said something happened during the lunch outing, you were right on the money. My husband came back the other day. He apologized and said he was ready to talk to me. I obliged. I tried my best not to be all over him, but quite frankly I miss this man so damn much. He's my husband after all. He told me the following. I mentioned previously that we went out with our two newlywed friends Kai, 30 meters, and Marie, 29F. We did have some quality time with all four of us, but often one or more people were missing from the table, considering it was a fusion buffet and the food was amazing. Apparently, at some point, my husband and Marie grabbed some food together, or maybe before we left, since I know I was talking to just Kai for a while before they appeared and we got to the car. Whatever it was, they were alone together. Marie, the fiancée, told my husband that when Kai proposed, she realized she was in love with him. My husband, though she accepted Kai's proposal and tried to put her feelings to rest by organizing a lunch out. though apparently she was charmed or some bullshit because she asked him to run away with her or something. I don't know, but she wanted him to leave me and be with her. Now, Marie is honestly gorgeous, which I hate to say because I'm so pissed off with her. She's the typical blonde, blue-eyed, skinny pageant girl who looks kind of like Emma Watson. I'm not. My husband gently turned her down and wished her all the best. But he says he had her on her mind for a while. We were all college friends, so we know one another very well, and when I showed him Lotion Man, it all essentially exploded inside him. I had a hair towel and some SHT old clothes on and I was giggling over a stupid thing, and apparently my immaturity ticked him off over however the hell Marie was. He got sudden cold feet about our relationship and left for his brother's place. He eventually came back and said he loved me all over again. I was frozen in shock and asked some questions before asking him to sleep on the couch at least for that night. He did, and it didn't really help me sleep. I can't believe it, honestly, that he was considering SHing away all of our relationship for a crush. The more I think about it, the less I can look him in the eye. We went to Thanksgiving lunch together with some of his family plus some close friends, and we spent last night together, so I think he thinks he's in the clear. I can't lie and say I'm not considering just forgiving and forgetting though. He comes home from work about 6 hours from now and I don't know what to do next. I have off today, I'm a teacher, and so I'm considering either A, contacting Kai and telling him about what his fiancée is up to. My husband begged me not to as Marie was apparently making a spontaneous mistake. B, contacting Marie and chewing her out for trying to FCK up my relationship or having a civil conversation. Less tempting, but it's whatever. C, contacting Tyler, his brother, and asking if he left the house at some point. Tyler's house is very close to Marie's place and I'm very worried about that, though I doubt I'll get anything out of him. D, all of the above. Any advice, or well wishes, because I'm not in a great place right now, would be appreciated. If I do end up updating, it'll probably be on my profile since I understand the subreddit has a one update policy, plus I don't want to update without a definite outlook on the future. I think I've mentioned before that legal stuff scares the SHT out of me, so divorce will be tough, but it seems likely. I wish I could just forget it all. Thanks again. Final update. My husband has been cheating for 10 years. Hello everyone. I am back. I've moved out of our house. I'm staying with a friend. We're getting divorced. I confronted him with said friend, just simply because you never know what can happen. But at least I got some form of closure out of this. First off, he wasn't sorry at all. Didn't even ask me to stay. Just huffed and said okay, if this is what you want. When I asked him why, he just looked up at me. Didn't say a word. I asked him how he could keep this up for so long. What did he say? Because you both went along with it. So of course I asked further. As many of you guessed, Jenny knew. For some odd reason she was okay with this. I still don't understand why she would lie to me instead of just blocking me or something. I'll admit I was upset, very upset, and confused. So I asked again, why would you do this? He told me that he was cheating on me with her since the beginning of our dating, that she was just a fling though, and he didn't expect either relationship to really last. But it did. Woohoo. When I asked him why to cheat in the first place, because I was young, could get away with it at that time, so why not? He fucking disgusts me. I asked why he married me instead of her. Because you were the better choice. When I asked him to elaborate, he definitely elaborated. Jenny didn't have a good job, so she was a bad investment. Ew, Jenny was uglier. Once again ew, Jenny wasn't as good as me, she wasn't as clean as me, she wouldn't be as good of a partner as me, and so on. I asked why he would even have sex with her if he liked me better. Because she was more kinky. For your information, I am not kinky at all. I'm very vanilla. In fact, I asked about the kids. Of course, he clarified that the first kid was an accident. He literally did the air quotes. Jenny poked holes in her rubber, which he found out about but never confronted her. Of course I don't know if I can trust this. He had a second one with her, because in his mind, he could handle one, so why not two? What type of dumb fuckery is that? When I asked about how he treated Jenny, he confirmed that he did in fact only see her on weekends, but claimed to have never treated her poorly. He said he treated her as the mother of his children and respected her as such, but never treated her as a romantic partner. Apparently she's only there to screw, not to love. Smiles at the end of it all. He asked if he could talk to me privately. I couldn't find a reason not to, so I sent my friend out of the room. He told me that he still loved me and that we could work this out if I really wanted to. That he would abandon Jenny and his daughters but still pay child support. I said no, to which he let out the most dramatic sigh I'd ever heard in my life. before saying have it your way then wearing the most smug smile I've ever seen, like he'd won the biggest battle of all time. I was left conflicted. I cried in my friend's car all the way to his house. It's like my, now ex, could just change everything with a flick of a switch. I can feel myself already wanting him back. But I'm not going back, I'm never going back. I've got a lawyer, so does he, the papers are signed, all that's left is court. I can't believe how much my life has changed this year. I went from getting giddy to going home to see my husband smile, to dreading it, hating it, wishing to never see it again. I don't know whether Jenny really knew, but I'm guessing she did. I mean, how did she not know for 10 years? But that being said, how didn't I know for 10 years? Whatever, I just wanted to let Reddit know that this is what's happened. This didn't happen recently, but I forgot about the whole Reddit post. I've got other things to worry about if you didn't notice. Haha, I don't know what to trust. I don't even want to reach out to Jenny. I don't even want to know the truth anymore. You know, Matthew, if you managed to see this, honestly, I applaud you. Congrats, you did it. You ruined everything. You got away with it for over a decade, and it's finally over. I wonder if you'll go back to Jenny or just find some other girl to trick, to destroy. All I care is that you leave me out of it. I'm looking forward to moving on and minding someone who actually loves me. Escaping a hostile work environment. By the book. My story starts off as mundane as anybody's. 5 years into working for an enormous corporation, my group was reorged. This particular reorg was, like most efforts, a half-baked idea ginned up by a suit in a corner office, questionably planned, poorly executed and terribly communicated. Nonetheless, I was sent from my old group to a brand new, to me, group managed by Jim. Jim seemed an okay fellow, with a dry sense of humor and a British accent that lulled me into thinking he was a decent guy. Working for Jim was okay. He was never available, and when we did meet maybe once a month he'd bark off a list of things for me to do, then say he had a conflict and had to go to another call. I was floundering a little, but felt I had a handle on things. During my first annual review via phone, Jim offered up vanilla platitudes about how things were going well, while I heard him distractedly typing away at IMs from people pinging him. He paused when he got to my salary and hedged a bit. So I got you a small increase. I couldn't get you much. To be frank, I'm not going to question how anyone arrives at their salary level, but you make way more than the other people on my team. It was awkward, but not the first time I've had such a pointed salary discussion with a male manager. It's never been a talking point with any of the women who managed me, and I wondered if he would have made those comments to me if I were a man. I've managed teams over the years and noticed the women on my team seem to make less than their male counterparts, so I get I'm an anomaly. But I'm a high performer in a 25-year uninterrupted career, as I never chose to have children. I've worked hard for my salary and I'm proud of it. I could get hired elsewhere at this salary in my market easily given my experience, qualifications and certifications. Shortly after our review, Jim moved on to work with my primary group of business partners, leaving me with no manager, just a two-up manager I'd never met or spoken to. And that's when the SHT hit the fan. Unbeknownst to me at the time, my salary was brought up in a discussion with his new team, the fine ladies who were managers of the teams I worked with in my business partner group. As it's been relayed to me, Jim didn't blurt out the specific details of course, but when one of the women complained about something I'd done, Jim said he was surprised there were issues because I was the highest paid person on his, now former, team. He poisoned the well quite nicely for me. Going back through my emails I could pinpoint the date and time the remark was said, because the tone of every single one of those managers changed as if on a dime. If I asked a question, I was berated because, "You're our most senior analyst, you should know that." Documentation that had sufficed before was suddenly all wrong. There were two particularly hostile culprits, Pat, who managed reporting on the systems we were migrating, and her underling PM, Wanda. Pat came at me quick, fangs bared, with a demand that I put together a plan to get us to the next generation of reporting which wasn't due to be released until 2021. The 2021 plan Wanda, her PM, had put together, looked like notes on a greasy cocktail napkin, so Pat decided that since I was the SME, I should do Wanda's work for her instead. Pat wanted a plan from today, in 2019 through to the date of release in May 2021. According to her, it had to include all the tasks needed for delivery right from the start, which is not how planning works. I can't predict the future, so my plans usually start out detailed in the near term, with increasingly wider swaths of more generalized tasks to be elaborated in detail as we get further along. This is an industry standard approach, and was never a problem, right up until it was. Pat started hounding me relentlessly to get this full plan done for her in 5 days, which would have been an impossible task under the best of circumstances. Nonetheless, I put together a 2,000-line long plan, working evenings and over the weekend, because my arms had been in pain for several months from typing at my home office and I had to take frequent breaks from the pain. Note, I had been made a remote employee against my will, and when I was reorged I started asking for a desk back at work. Jim always dismissed my request, saying there was no space, so I spent over $1,500 on an ergonomic chair and desk for my home to make typing easier, but my arms still hurt any time I sat at the keyboard for more than a half hour. I had to backburner my more immediate, pressing work for upcoming releases in the next couple of months, because Pat told me I had to prioritize her work over everything else. I had no manager to help redirect my priorities back to my other work, and when I tried to say it would have to wait until I finished my more pressing work, Pat sighed and bitterly said in front of a half-dozen people including Wanda, "So you're our most senior SME and you're telling me you can't do the work?" Pat then decided to up the ante by insisting I run every element of the plan I was creating for Wanda by Wanda, a junior-level PM who not only didn't understand the systems we were using, I had to tell her how to create her own status reports, but wrote at a third-grade level. Even subject/verb agreement is out of Wanda's grasp, but she had a chip on her shoulder and now she believed she could tell me what to do and how to do it. It was like a teacup poodle trying to guide a Rottweiler. Wanda was immediately and clearly out of her element, and obviously so. As a result, every single time she was caught effing up, she threw me right under the bus. She'd preemptively throw me under the bus too. Wanda's only talent was deflecting blame and painting herself as the victim. Final update: escaping a hostile work environment, by the book. I left one minor detail out of my first post. My mother was incredibly abusive and we hadn't spoken for 5 years. My bereavement leave was a week of chilling out trying to figure out what to do about work because I didn't even go to her funeral. No one at work knew this. My official story was I was grieving such a devastating loss, and that's what you'll read in the original post. I think that's enough to catch everyone up. Here's how everything's gone down since. First, the leave could not have come at a better time. The day I made my last post, my sweet cat Ray was not himself. In fact, that's the last video I took of him. I took him to the emergency vet, where we found out he had lymphoma in his liver and pancreas. We had to let him go a couple of days later. There was no way I could have worked and grieved for him at the same time, and going on medical leave right after your cat dies is not nearly as socially acceptable as taking leave after your mom dies. Rest in peace, my sweet boy. I was spinning for a good couple of weeks after that. My arms still hurt a lot and I wasn't able to type for more than 20 to 30 minutes, and even that hurt. I continued physical therapy, and was frustrated at how slow the progress was. My therapist asked me to video myself typing at home. He took one look at it and saw the problem immediately. My desk and chair were fine. The horizontal and vertical parts of my workspace were fine. The problem was that my keyboard was too narrow, so my arms were constantly at an angle which caused stress on all the joints. At his recommendation, I bought an ergonomic split keyboard and immediately noticed a difference. By the end of the year I was pain-free, although I still can't type for as long as I used to. Because my out-of-pocket maximum had been reached with my health insurance, I took the opportunity to get everything checked out under the hood. I'm 48, so I had a colonoscopy and endoscopy. Fun. The doc says my colon is perfect, so if I ever need a Tinder bio, I know what to lead with. I went to the dermatologist, gynecologist, every ologist in the book, and except for my weak arms, I'm pretty healthy. I also went into an IOP, intensive outpatient program, for therapy the last 6 weeks of the year, where I spent 3 hours, 3 days a week in group therapy with other people. I made some amazing and fascinating new friends, including a paramedic and firefighter both coping with PTSD, an Afghanistan veteran, and several others. I also learned about complex trauma from childhood abuse, and came to realize that my anxiety, depression, and ADHD were not necessarily 3 separate diagnoses, but instead were symptoms of complex PTSD, CPTSD, likely related to my mother's continual abuse and a few other traumatic childhood events. Because of IOP, I'm now working with a trauma therapist and left my general therapist. After decades of regular therapy barely helping, I have someone to work with to help me truly put my past in the past so I can heal emotionally. My mother's death and this leave was the best thing that could have happened for my physical and emotional health. When I made my last post, I resented the hell out of Jim, Pat and Wanda for being so cruel to me at work. I still don't like them, but I've moved past resentment and I'm now grateful for the situation, because their hostility was the catalyst that got me the treatment I've needed for years, decades. My husband and I also met with our financial advisor who, after running the numbers, made it clear that for both of us, work should be considered as more of a want thing than a need to activity. Turns out dual income, no kids and saving throughout my 25-year career was a good decision, so I decided I don't want to work for this company anymore. My leave ended and I returned to work 2 days ago. As soon as I returned, I sat down with my new manager and told him about Jim, Pat, and Wanda. Of course, no one had filled him in on their behavior. I gave him some hard copies of emails documenting their stunts. He was shocked by that, but was not surprised when I ended my 5-minute summary with, "So unfortunately I'm going to have to resign." I handed over my letter with my 2 weeks notice. He asked me if I truly wanted to work those 2 weeks and I said, "Not particularly, no, but I do want to get some things off my work computer, so I need to get it back online." He agreed it would be a waste for me to try to really pick up anything. I jumped through the hoops of getting my computer online to get those docs. I blocked Jim, Pat, and Wanda, along with 3 other people who were toxic but not quite as nasty as those 3, as soon as I pulled up MS Communicator. I'm not attending any meetings. I have just one meeting on my calendar next week, the one where my new manager will announce my departure to the team. Meanwhile, I'm getting paid full salary for these 2 weeks as well, and I'll get all my 2020 vacation days paid out when I leave. So, the final tally of just how much Jim's asshole move cost my company and benefited me: 1 week of bereavement leave at 100% of my salary, 8 weeks of FMLA paid at 100%, 4 weeks of FMLA paid at 65%, 1.5 weeks of extended certified medical leave paid at 65%, 2 weeks of salary at 100%, 4 weeks of PTO payout at 100%, for a grand total of 20.5 weeks or 5 months of salary, at varying rates, for doing nothing but taking care of my own damn self. And I'm not including the thousands of dollars I didn't have to pay while getting checkups, medical procedures, physical therapy and group therapy, as it was all covered by my company's medical insurance. I'm also not including what they all had to go through to put a new person on these releases, and all the stress I didn't have because I didn't end up delivering on these projects. The weekend in November when my project was set to go live, I was in another town for an old friend's memorial, seeing people I hadn't seen in 20 years. I wouldn't have been able to attend if I hadn't gone on leave. I'm not going to reveal my salary, but I will say that the last several months have cost the company tens of thousands of dollars, for my salary alone. The other benefits I've reaped, on top of the salary, have been immeasurable. They say living well is the best revenge, and it's true. Jim, Pat and Wanda are still their ugly selves, chained to their desks, bitter and making sure everyone around them knows it. As for me, I'm free of the chains of a 9-to-5 job. I don't think I'm going to look for another job for quite some time, and when I do, it's going to have to be something I want to do, not something I need to do. Now I just need to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. My family wants to reconnect after 6 years. So this is a long story, and English is not my first language. Please bear it with me. These are all fake names. I, 45M, was married to my high school sweetheart Sarah, 45F. We had 4 daughters: Jane, 24F, Tori, 22F, Brianna, 21F, and Claire, 18F. I met Sarah when we were 14 and we started dating right away. My parents loved Sarah and she became like the daughter they never had. I remember my father sitting me down and giving me advice of good communication with each other. Think before you make any decision. That type of stuff. Sarah and I were dating for 7 years at the time when we found out she was pregnant with Jane. We were both over the moon, got married soon after, and went on to have our beautiful family. The only problem was my brother Jack, 43M. Jack always had a crush on Sarah. It kind of harmed my relationship with him, but I tried to let it go because he was my brother and because Sarah also knew and had reassured me that she didn't have feelings for him. My limit was when Jack found out about mine and Sarah's engagement. He confessed his love for her and tried to convince her to leave me. She didn't and told me. At this point I was mad at Jack and I was ready to kick his ass, and Sarah asked me not to. I was ready to cut my brother out of my life. It took Sarah and my parents, 68M and 66F, to convince me not to. My marriage with Sarah was amazing. We had, like any other couple, our ups and our downs, but I wouldn't change anything about it. We were a passionate couple who loved each other and their children more than anything. Mine and my brother's relationship improved after the incident, and I truly believed he had gotten over his crush on Sarah, Little did I know that he didn't only still had a crush on Sarah but also was planning to break us up. One day, more than 6 years ago, I had arrived home after a week away due to job reasons and found my daughters, my wife and my brother in the living room. Sarah and my daughters were crying, and when they saw me they started to scream at me. Sarah asked, "How could you have done this to me?" When I asked what she meant, she said cheating. I was surprised she accused me of cheating. Never in 25 years we had been together I cheated on her. I asked what made her believe I cheated on her. She showed me some pictures and texts that proved I had cheated on her with a colleague. I asked where she got this proof, and my brother jumped in saying that this coworker, who also was friends with him, had confessed to him and sent him the proof. I started crying and begged Sarah to believe me. I told her that this was Jack's doing. She slapped me in the face and kicked me out. Before I left, Jane and Tori called me all kinds of names. The one who pained me the most was, "You are a disgrace to our family." For a long time I tried to make Sarah and the girls see reason and to make them understand that I would never cheat, but sadly it was all in vain. My parents disowned me, and my dad said if I was a man I would make the divorce easy. Before the end of the year me and Sarah were already divorced, and my daughters didn't want to see me. In the beginning of 2017, Sarah and Jack got married. My daughters sent me a message saying that they hated me and didn't want anything to do with me, and that they had a new father figure in their lives. It was hard, but with a lot of therapy I learned to move on. I always held on hope my family would find the truth, but I learned to live with the possibility they never would. 5 years went by without any contact with anyone from my family until a few days ago. I received a call from an unknown number. When I picked up I said, "Hello, who is this?" And I heard sobs from the other side. It was my mom. She said they were sorry and wanted to meet me. I asked why, and my mom said my family had found the truth about everything, but this was a matter to be discussed personally. I told my mom that when or if I felt ready to meet them I would call her, but I didn't want to be contacted by no one until or unless I said something back. She told me she understood and that she missed me. We said our goodbyes, but to be honest I still don't know what I should do. Update: my family wants to reconnect after 6 years. A few people have asked me for an update, so here it is. So I arrived at my parents' Saturday morning. I rang the door and my mom opened it. She started crying and hugged me. It was a bit of a reward for me. My dad gave me a handshake and I got in. My mom started trying to make small talk. She asked me how I was. She then commented that I looked way better and that I lost weight. I replied, "When you're depressed you forget to eat." I then asked how they found out. My mom said that Jack was wasted and had an argument with Sarah, and something like, "I didn't plan all this so I would take with your SHT." Sarah then forced him to confess. Sarah and my daughters wanted to contact me, but my mom said it would be better if just she contacted me. I started laughing. My dad was a little mad and asked me what's so funny. I said that my brother probably spent years trying to separate me and Sarah and blew it all up. All he had to was be quiet and he could continue with his beautiful life. I then asked my parents if they could imagine how would our lives be if they and Sarah didn't try to convince to forgive my brother after he tried to convince Sarah to run with him. My dad started crying. It was the first time in my 45 years of life that I had seen my old man crying. He started to apologize, saying he was an awful father, but that he, my mom, Sarah and my daughters were all sorry. I was able to not cry and I told them that I would love to reconcile, but it would take time. My mom asked me if she could give the green light to Sarah to contact me. I said yes. They then asked more about my life as they wanted to know how I was doing. Overall, it was better than I expected. The next day, Sarah sent me a message and asked me if she could call me. I replied a few hours later that she could. Not even 5 minutes later she called me. She asked me how I was. I told her that given the circumstances I could be worse. I asked how she and our daughters were. She said that they are not so good. After my brother confessed, Sarah and my daughters felt remorseful and kicked my brother out. I asked Sarah a few questions. Why did she marry Jack so quickly and how come she didn't believe me? She started crying. She said that during and after our divorce, my brother had been her rock. Sarah said that they eventually started dating and they got married because, and I was shocked to hear this, she got pregnant. I was a bit taken back when I heard it. I asked if she could repeat it and she did. I told her that I needed time. I warned that the chances of us getting back together are not looking good and I didn't want her to have false hopes. She cried a bit more but said they understood. She ended the conversation with "Hey, I love you, I just said goodbye. My wife is the breadwinner and I hate it. Bear with me here. I have been separated from my wife, 33F, for a couple of years, known each other since we were kids and have been together since our adolescence. We separated amicably because honestly I was tired of being a less than stellar provider. For context, my wife is a lawyer and worked hard to get to where she is. I'm a stay-at-home writer who didn't make any real money until the last few years. Me being a stay-at-home worker meant that I've always been around for our kids, an 11-year-old girl and twin 6-year-old boys. If my wife was my universe, my kids are the stars in it. So I decided to go and get my SHT in order, and she understood, since her being the only breadwinner wasn't an issue. Until it was, and we went our separate ways. I went and upped my craft and have been getting more and more job opportunities, so I'm now financially better off. I'm still not making lawyer money, but I'm definitely good enough to handle things now. It's been a few years, and in that time I've come full circle with a lot of things, like the passing of my father and my own personality flaws. And amidst all the discovery, I discovered something that I think I've always known. I still love her. Big surprise, but bear with me. I can't shake this feeling in my heart that she's still the one for me. So I first felt this a year ago when I saw her at a family get-together. She brings my kids and obviously stays to chat with my family since they obviously enjoy her company. And I couldn't take my eyes off her. She was gorgeous. No biggie, I'm probably just alone and stupid. Thought nothing of it. A few weeks later, I was dropping off our kids at her house after they had spent the weekend with me. She was in the same damn pajama bottoms she's had since college, and her hair was in a top bun. And she was still gorgeous. Now I'm worried. So I talked to my therapist about it, and over the next few months I focus on other things. I get in better shape, change my hairstyle, and for the first time I'm even growing facial hair. I'm working on me so that I can eventually tell myself that maybe I was just lonely and going through things. Well, 6 months later, here I am to tell you that I still love her. Now I'd how she feels, but I'm sure of it in my heart of hearts now that I love her with every fiber of my being, and truthfully I don't think I've ever stopped. So what's stopping me now? I don't want to overstep. Maybe she's not feeling that way anymore. Maybe she's moved on. Who knows? I also gotta be mindful of my kids. Last thing I want to do is get their hopes up with something that might never happen. Lastly, how can I make sure I don't mess this up again? Things are going really well for me, but I'd give it all up to have her back in my life. So, think y'all can help your boy out? Update 1. My wife is the breadwinner and I hate it. So I just got back from the date. We went to this restaurant that we used to like before we had kids. I didn't know what to wear, so I just went kind of business casual. And she was stunning as per usual. We ordered appetizers and talked about some lighter stuff, like how our daughter loves soccer, how the boys are starting to look more and more like me. They some little chunky things, but I love them. And she made fun of me for getting the same appetizer I always get. Why mess with perfection, right? So as the night went on and we finished dinner, I worked up the nerve to just tell her the truth, and do it so I wouldn't overwhelm her. I told her that I was proud of her for everything she had done, especially in her career, and how she's always been a great mom and person. She immediately stopped eating, looked at me and said, "Are you dying?" Needless to say, I laughed pretty hard. I was gonna say something corny like, "No baby, I'm dying without you," but I figured this wasn't the time. I just said, "No, I'm okay. I just wanted you to know that I appreciate you," and she in turn told me that while she appreciated it, she wished that O was around more. I told her that I'd never turn my back on our kids and that I want to be with them even more. But she said it wasn't about the kids. She wanted me to be around more for her. I asked her what she meant and she just unloaded on me, telling me that she always believed in me and that when I left it made her feel like she wasn't good enough. I told her that I was sorry and that I never meant to make her feel that way. She said the reason we weren't divorced is because she didn't want to admit to herself that it was over. That the man she's loved her whole life could up and decide that the relationship we'd built together wasn't enough. I stopped her right there, and I told her everything, and I mean everything, that she's my everything and that I couldn't bear to be a failure and let her down, and that I didn't do what I did out of some selfish desire, but because I wanted to make more out of my life so I could do more for her and our children. She said that it felt like I had changed everything about myself because I was ashamed of who I was, when she always loved who I was. I asked her what she meant and she pointed at how I'm dressed, how I've lost weight, and even how I style my hair. It was like, in her opinion, the old me wasn't the real me and this person in front of her was just an imitation. I told her that who I am on the outside may have changed a bit, but the man you love, the one you truly love, is still here in front of you. She didn't say much after that. I paid for dinner and decided to take her home. Maybe it was all too much. So we're driving back and I look at her while I drive. She's still a bit emotional from dinner. I plug in my aux cable, and I play the song "Always Be My Baby" by Mariah Carey. She loves that song so much I must have heard it a million times, and I start to sing it to her. The chorus goes, "You will always be a part of me, and I'm part of you indefinitely. Boy, don't you know you can't escape me. No darling, cuz you'll always be my baby. I'm singing the hell out of this song, guys. And she's smiling a bit, especially as I ruin the riffs, and I swear I meant every goddamn word. She's finally singing along with me, and when the car stops I open my door and get out to open hers. I walk her to the front door and tell her how much I enjoyed tonight. She says that she didn't know I knew all the words to the song. And of course I know it, because, well, it's about us in a way. I kiss her hand and ask her if she'd like to go out with me again. She said yes. Now we're home. Well, I'm typing this while she's sleeping next to me on her couch. I tucked her in and I'm just watching her now. I'm gonna go kiss my kids and get out of here. I don't know how long or how far this is gonna go. But one thing for sure, she's still and will always be my baby. Thanks for helping me out, guys. I appreciate it so much. Update 2. My girlfriend's ex showed up to my apartment. It's currently around 7 p.m. when writing this, and honestly the last 13-ish hours I've been up have been effing draining to say the least. I awoke in the morning to my phone going absolutely nuts with notifications from Reddit. I'm honestly like, oh FCK, why the actual FCK did I decide to pour my personal thoughts out into a Reddit post? I began to scroll y'all's comments, and to say I was shocked is an absolute understatement. Literally almost all of y'all are actively taking my side. And I mean, I was just scrolling this morning just looking for that one comment that was taking hers. It did not come. What surprised me the most were the amount of women in this thread that said they would never do this to their man and that it is beyond disrespectful. I mean, those comments hit the hardest this morning, as those were my thoughts exactly. Last night was an effing stress storm for me, to be honest. I couldn't believe what the FCK had just happened. As y'all can guess from my post, I live alone, so there wasn't anyone at my crib that I could talk to, so I decided to call the one man that's had my back since day one. My pops. As many have messaged me and many have commented, I will go into detail on what exactly our phone call entailed. First, I'm gonna go back to when it originally happened so that it makes more sense. Also, when reading back my thoughts from last night, it was clear I was rushing at the end and honestly just fed up with everything at that point, so I skipped a lot of details. Okay, to start, Lily had just stormed out of my apartment at this point when I called her out that she wouldn't be effing okay with me meeting with my ex cause they needed someone to lean on. Like I said before, I didn't call out, text, or follow her. At this point I am effing furious and I can't believe what the FCK just happened. I take a seat on the couch and try breathing exercises. I am trying to calm down, but it's no use cause I keep remembering Kyle asking, do you want me to leave? To my girlfriend. I didn't really elaborate on this beforehand, but that SHT effing sent me to another world and I was absolutely about lose my SHT to the max. I just kept telling myself it's not worth it, it's not worth it, it's not worth it. At this point all I want to do is beat Kyle's ass, and all my methods for calming down were failing at this point. I just said FICK it and picked up my phone and said, Siri, call old man. I honestly didn't know what I was going to say at this point. But I knew if there was one person who could get through to me, it would be my pops. Now I don't remember the exact dialogue that exactly went down, but I'm going to try my best to be as accurate as possible. Phone dialing. Dad picks up and says, I seen it already. Vooch dropped 43 on the ass. I started laughing a bit and say, it's not about that, Dad. I just go into a huge effing fight with Lily, Dad. I'm really effing pissed, Dad. I don't want to do anything stupid. Whoa, okay, where are you right now? Are you with her? Are you guys okay? Dad. I'm at the crib right now and she just stormed out. Yes, I am chilling, I just don't know what do. Me. There's a long pause after this and I hear my pops take a deep breath and say, all right, hit me. I began to give him the same rundown I gave you guys in my last post. The whole time my pops is dead silent, doesn't say a effing a word. I finished up the story. All he asked was, what does Kyle look like? I won't lie, this caught my off guard cause I was like, damn, Dad, why the FCK does it matter what he looks like? I responded, he was white with long curly hair. Why? My dad was like, no, how tall was he? At this point I'm like, WTF, Dad? His ass was like 5'9" max. My dad laughs a bit and says, explains the Timberlands then. Effing male equivalent of heels. I didn't realize it yesterday, but what my pops was doing was what he always does. I literally can't stay pissed if I laugh, and my dad can make me laugh on demand. I started laughing. I was like, you're right. He then was like, how much you think he weighed? I had to think for a minute, but I was like, maybe $155-ish. My pops then brought up the argument between Kyle and I. You said Lily told Kyle to leave after you started to get mad, right? Yeah, I responded. My dad pauses for a long time again and takes another deep breath. My name. I wouldn't be surprised if this situation is a lot deeper than it seems. It speaks volumes to me she only rallied for him to leave after you began to get real upset. My name, you're 6'0", 190 and were just disrespected in your own house by a man you do not know. When a woman cares for someone, the last thing she wants is for him to be in harm's way. She understood exactly what was going to happen if the situation continued to escalate, and she chose to get Kyle out of harm's way. Followed by switching all the blame to you and leaving. Honestly, son, where do you think she's at right now? Final update. My girlfriend's ex showed up to my apartment. I didn't say anything. I knew what he was implying. I know it hurts, but promise me you won't do anything irrational. She made her decision, there's not much you can do to change it. You've proven your whole life you're one of one, don't lose yourself now over something that will just end up a tiny bump on your roadmap. I mean seriously, I couldn't be more effing proud of you, son. You're 22, living on your own in city. You got your SHT together, that's rare, my name. You're rare, my name. The right women like your mom for me. I laughed a little. Will walk into your life when you least expect it. Don't waste your energy. Everything happens for a reason, son. I paused for a minute and said, thank you, I needed this, Dad. My dad laughed. Of course, your mom and I are here for you always. Ends call. Fast forward back to this morning. I couldn't sleep for SHT last night, so this morning was just completely ass. Lily was blowing up my phone the whole night, apologizing and begging for my forgiveness. It's around 11 a.m. at this point. I'm completely just over this situation. I still haven't responded to her since she stormed off last night. In my opinion, she made her choice. However, I got a long-ass week ahead of me and can't be having this SHT continues to impact me this much going forward. I eat something and head down to my apartment's local gym to just run. On lifting days I go to a private gym, and on cardio days I use the apartment's gym. Running is therapeutic for me. Around 1 o'clock I got a phone call, and you guessed it, it was from Lily. No part of me wanted to pick up the phone, but we've been dating for 2.5 years. I felt obligated. Picks up phone. What's up? I say, to be immediately met with crying. I'm sorry, my name, I love you to death. Please just talk to me. I shouldn't have left last night. I panicked. You know I love you, my name. I didn't say anything, my name. Please talk to me. This isn't right. Please just talk to your girlfriend. I'm sorry. I told you nothing happened. I won't ever talk to him again. Please, I beg, can we just talk? At this point the realization of my feelings for her started to really kick in. Instead of anger, sorrow, or any emotion tbh, I just felt a sense of indifference when she spoke. I responded, can you come over around 3? Still crying at this point. Yes, she says. Okay, I say. Ends call. I'm just sitting on the sofa now at this time, just waiting for 3 to roll around. Scrolling through the comments on my previous post. Knock knock, I hear from the hallway. Shortly after I see my girlfriend emerge from the mini hallway. She begins to start smiling and crying while wiping her tears. Again, I take notice of how I feel at this moment. A sense of indifference. A feeling I don't care about anymore. It really started to hit me. 2.5 years wasted just like that. The woman who I cared so deeply for just 24 hours before now is in front of me crying, and I don't feel a thing. Lily, it's over between us, I said. Completely shocked. She barely manages to mutter out, what? While still crying. It's over, I repeated. My name, my name, my name, my name, my name. No. Please, I'm sorry. Don't end this between us. I love you to death, she said hysterically. Now I won't lie, that last bit hit hard. I mean effing hard, man. I couldn't mask it anymore. The lid had been broken. Don't end this between us? I say, Lily, I'm sorry, I can't take this SHT anymore. I don't know what impression I gave you over our relationship, but I won't stay in a relationship with a woman who thinks that effing little of me. You made the decision to end SHT between us when invited your ex into my apartment behind my effing back, Lily. That is something I refuse to let slide, Lily. At this point my thoughts just begin to flow out of my mouth like an effing tidal wave. No man is that cocky for no reason, Lily. I'm not an effing fool, Lily. You gave him some type of reassurance to give him the confidence to act like that. SHT, you even backed him in front of me. Why the FCK would I stay with someone who's not going to have my back? Absolutely bawling at this point, Lily says, I'm sorry. My name, I love you, I'm sorry, y'all can call me whatever you want, but at this point I just went soft. I didn't have the heart to keep drilling her anymore. She was just breaking down, crying uncontrollably. I just sat down in silence. My name, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. My name, I love you, only you. I won't ever talk to him again, I promise. My name, please just give me one more chance, said Lily. I'm completely silent. I mean, there was just a huge effing pressure on my chest. It felt like my rib cage was gonna crack under the pressure. Sat there silently listening to her crying. I remembered one of my favorite songs, I'd rather have loyalty than love. 'Cause love really don't mean jack. See, love is just a feeling. You can love somebody and still stab them in the back. It don't take much to love. You can love somebody just by being attached. See, loyalty is action. You can love or hate me and still have my back. -21 Savage. I just kept repeating those lyrics in my head over and over and over again. To many, it might seem she said all the right things, but to me actions speak louder than words. Last night she chose to make her decision on us through her actions, and since actions speak louder than words, it really didn't matter what she said. I'm struggling to keep it together at this point. I really did love her, SHT I still effing do, but I understood this was what's best for me. I wouldn't have been able to trust her again. You can't be in a relationship without trust or loyalty. I lost both from her. As she cries, I look up and say, Lily, please. It's over. There's no saving this. She looks at me and says, my name. No, please just stop. It's over, Lily. I interrupt. Please just do us both a favor and take your things and leave, Lily. It's over, please, let's just end it here. She doesn't say anything and gets up and starts grabbing some of her things around their apartment. I grabbed a garbage bag and helped her pack. She left the keys to my apartment on the table and left. This all finished up around 4:30 today. I've just been sitting here trying to process what the FCK just happened. Honestly, it all still doesn't feel real. I never intended on posting on Reddit yesterday, but I just needed a place for an effing event, and since it blew up, I felt like I should update y'all today. It's 7:35 as I finish writing this. I'm effing hurt. The weight of what the FCK just went down over the last 24 hours doesn't real. To anyone who actually read this long ass update, thank you. To those who commented on my previous post, then you, I effing needed a place to vent last night. You're 26 years older than me. We have to break up. Hello. This is a really delicate situation here. I hope you can help me. I am 18 and in a relationship with a woman that's 44 for a year and a half now. I know. It's a big age gap and blah blah blah. I'm not here to be judged. At the start it was magic between us. But with time she started getting more and more demanding. First, every possible moment we had to be on a video call. Second, we can't talk 24/7, so after talking we just hop on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok and etc. But she insisted to know in which app am I at every moment, and when I switch, for example, from Facebook to Instagram, to tell her. Third, we, of course, don't and can't live together. We used to see each other once or twice every week, and she wanted me to stop masturbating and I stopped. Fourth, I live with my parents and our relationship is kept in secret, so I can't tell my parents. Oftentimes when my mom or dad comes nearby me, I close the video call window so they don't see that I'm talking with 40+ women. My camera stops showing to her when she is closed. Also, my microphone is muted because she can't walk around the house with earphones so she can hear my surroundings. And when she gets closed, she wants me to tell her why I closes the camera, who was nearby, why that person was nearby, and with time wanted me to photo them so she can be sure that I'm not lying. Fifth, we chat 24/7, and when we are not on camera she wants me to photo her everything I do so she can be sure I'm not lying. Sixth, now I can't go to places I used to go, can't even hang out with friends like I used to do. Seventh, she wants to know what I'm talking with anybody. When someone calls SME I have to screenshot the call and then tell her why that person called me. When someone chats me, I have to screenshot the chat and send it to her, so she can know. Eighth, wants me every day to tell her I'm not masturbating, I'm not talking to girls so she can be reassured. Ninth, 10th, I'm really getting fed up with that. It feels like the next day she will wake up and she will start to want for me to photo my dump, because she don't believe me that I was shitting. She was a husband, but he works abroad so he is home only 2 months of the year, the summer and the winter. She is cold with him, like really cold. They don't sleep in one bed, even in different rooms. She says that she doesn't have sex with him and I trust her 100%. But when he is home we can't see each other and she becomes even more unbearable. We fight at least once every week for the littlest things, and that's happening for almost a year now. I can't have some privacy, can't play video games because she wants us to be on video call, but that way I should hide the phone when I game if someone comes in my room. You can't even hang out with my friends anymore. I even stopped hanging out with some of them because they go to bars, nightclubs or go like camping and etc. It feels like I'm wasting my years. Let me remind you, I'm 18, my fucking life is starting now. Next year I'm graduating high school. I blame also myself for this position we are in, because I wanted to please her and make her happy no matter what. But now everything just comes too much. Now I'm considering final breakup. I've broken up with her 4 times but you return the next day because I don't even know why. I don't know if I return because I love her or because I don't want her to feel sad and stuff. I'm fucking people pleaser and I hate myself for that, but now I'm considering change. What do you all think? Ada? Sorry for mistakes in typing. English is not my mother language and I'm pretty angry now. And sorry if something sounds illogical. Found out my wife is a lesbian and I'm devastated. I, 34 male, and my wife 32F have been together for 10 years, married for 7. And I think I never loved someone so much in my entire life. We met when we were still in college and became friends real quick. She was never really open about sexuality in general, but once I started to flirt with her, to my surprise, she was receptive. On one of our first dates, she told me the reason why she never talked about it was that she had a very low libido, and a few years into the relationship she said she was asexual. At the time I didn't even know what that was, and it actually made a lot of sense to me. We build an entire life together. We have a 5-year-old dog that is my best friend in the whole world. We just bought our first house and we are both financially stable. We don't have relations as often as other couples do, but there are occasions where it happens, like on holidays, my birthday, whenever something really nice happens, and those rare days when she surprises me. The fact that it's such an uncommon thing really makes it all more pleasurable, and I always felt like I was in heaven every single time that we were intimate. But now it just seems like I was living under a spell this whole time. It started when I began to notice how often I would catch her self-pleasuring. I always thought I was just imagining this because it seemed like she was trying to hide from me every time. I was always confused because she could literally ask me any time for relations that she knew I would do, but instead, she would lock herself in the bathroom or do it when I was out. One day I was looking at her Instagram and decided to check on who she followed. I was never curious enough to do that, and to my surprise, she was following a lot of, mostly, more masculine lesbians. She always had lesbian friends and that never really bothered me, but since I saw that I started to get more paranoid that she was cheating with one of them. I let that stay in my head for months until I gathered enough courage to talk to her, and her reaction was nothing like I expected. She broke down crying, talking about how bad of a person she was and that she never wanted to put me in a situation like this. She went on about how she hated herself for hiding all of these years, how her family would treat her like garbage. They are extremely religious, so much that I thought it had to do with her repulsion towards relations, and how she didn't want to lose me but knew that if I found out the truth I wouldn't want to look her in the face. And the truth is, I don't know. I was so speechless that I just stood there. I still don't know how to express what I'm feeling. Sad? Angry? Desperate? Heartbroken? I don't effing know. I love this woman. She was there for me when I discovered my cancer. She was the shoulder I leaned on when my mom passed. She was the person that stayed awake all night when all I could do was cry myself to sleep from grief. She is my best friend, the person that knows every side of me, that knows how to make me smile more than anyone else. The fact that I can't even look at her right now makes my skin crawl. Not even in our worst fights we would stay like this. It's been 3 days and I don't know what to do. I'm not going to my family's Christmas because I don't have the energy. She is locked in her room all day and only comes out to eat. We are on opposite sides of the house not talking to each other. I don't even know how I'm capable of even creating this account to post this, but I don't know what to do. For the first time in my life, I feel like I can't even think. The fact that she spent a third of her life hiding who she is, being forced to have relations with a man, just makes me disgusted with myself. I can't imagine how miserable I would be if I was in this situation. I can't imagine a life without her, but I don't think that things will ever be how they were. Edit. This post got a lot more attention than I thought it would. I would like to say that I'm really grateful for all of the advice, and I've been reading your replies the whole day trying to figure out what to do. I'm now staying at a hotel. I thought about talking to her like a lot of you suggested, but right now I don't even know if I would be able to. I'm not sure how long I'm staying here, but for now it's the best option for me. I'll try to reply to your comments now, and again, thank you. A lot of you also shared your similar experiences and they really helped me organize my feelings. I'm still a mess, but definitely better. My parents are religious demons. Help me, Ada. Thinking about leaving my relationship over sexual indifference, 25, with my BF, 33, for almost 2 years now. I'm beginning to feel distant and unwanted. My BF has an obsession with the backside, if you get what I mean. It's to the point where I feel like he would rather do that than regular sex. If I don't give it up, usually it's followed by a tantrum or making me feel so bad I give in. Let me tell you a little about me. I've never been interested in it or have ever done it before getting with my current BF. I have a history of hemorrhoids and IBS, which makes that sort of thing painful as all hell. I've tried everything to get it to be better, but it just hasn't. I still give in to him though because I love him and want to make him happy. I just push through it. He is a very hard-working man and has taken care of me these last 2 years. He's not a terrible human being or anything, so naturally I've never thought about leaving up till this point. Thought I was gonna marry him. Edit. I'm a CNA, I make my own money. By taking care of me I meant he did all the nice boyfriend things. It's to the point though where our sex life is being affected because if I don't feed into his obsession he will usually take care of himself a lot. Usually meaning he can't perform when it comes to our time. And I'm starting to feel a little unwanted because he can't finish to just me anymore. He has to be touching my backside in some way. I feel bad for thinking about leaving, but I don't think I can do this for the rest of my life and feel the way it makes me feel, not to mention the pain I go through for him just to be disappointed when it's us time. Ada? P.S. Most times we have regular sex, he goes soft, thought out the whole thing, and I feel like he literally has to force himself to finish. He claims it's cause he's older and that sort of thing happens sometimes. Edit. I do have low self-esteem, that's true. I just love hard and thought I was doing what I'm supposed to as a GF. Hearing everything, I understand this man doesn't love me. It hurts because after all I've given him, he still doesn't think I'm worth giving up anal for. And that is something that will stick with me, but I'll be okay. My daughter was disappointed about not being at her dad's wedding. Her father got married today and she was so excited. He promised her a special role in the wedding and a special gift like a ring or bracelet or something. Plus fun, dancing, cake, etc. I got her ready this morning and she was just so excited. I go to bring her to where he had previously told me to bring her. Well, plans changed and he dropped the ball and forgot to tell me where to go. It was an extra 20-minute ride after the already 30-minute ride. We get there, I send her in with the ladies. Now she gets home far earlier than expected, is a crying heap, and she tells me she had no special role, didn't get to stand with them or help at all. She didn't get the special gift he promised. He didn't line up anyone to keep an eye on her. The person he told me was bringing her home didn't know that she was supposed to bring her. She didn't get to dance or have cake because the party got too wasted and rowdy too fast after the vows, so she was brought home early by the person who wasn't aware they were her ride. I'm beyond upset for her. I'm just at such a loss on what to do for her to make her feel better. Now she won't get to see her dad for the next 2 weeks for his honeymoon and she's already saying she misses him, then just looks sad. I just needed to vent this somewhere. She's been talking about this wedding for a whole year and now she just seems crushed. Edited to update. I've read every single comment and all the love here is super reassuring. I appreciate all of the advice and have taken some of it. Seriously, thank you for all the advice. We let her pick out a cake to have. She loved it. I finally folded and dyed pink streaks in her hair. We have a few mom and daughter things planned out and she's feeling better today. She even went to cheer and did a fantastic job, though looked a little sad at moments. My husband has been great with her and showing extra love too. I also spoke to a couple different people who are my daughter's family there but I know are on her side of things. Apparently the stepmom set up most of the wedding. It was unorganized to say the least. No one was in charge of setup. She was an hour late for her own wedding. She was supposed to give our daughter a role but had only her side of the family in the wedding. I'd where he fell in all of this, other than just letting her walk all over him and our daughter. He should have been there to stick up for her. They both had a failure of duty here because neither of them followed through on the promises and well-being of my baby girl. Now I have 2 weeks to plan what to say to them and how to say it. Edit 2. Forgot to mention I am finding her a therapist immediately. Not sure what kind I'm going for other than specialties with children. I am also considering consulting a lawyer. Final update. My daughter was disappointed about not being at her dad's wedding, so I made a post a while ago here. A few people have requested an update, but be warned it's a bit long. The gist of the first post is that my daughter, 6F, went to her father's wedding with all these promises that she would have a big important role and it would be very special. She went, he didn't communicate where I was supposed to bring her at all, so I was a bit late dropping her off. It was an extra 20 to 30 minutes away. She didn't have a role. She sat like a guest through the ceremony. She didn't get cake and was brought home early by her father's mom, Grammy. She was crushed. After the events of the post he went blissfully on his honeymoon and I picked up the pieces of our child. She was distraught. For days she would just look sad at moments and go to her room or cry a bit or lay down on the couch or come in for a cuddle. She's been begging me for a year to get some pink hair, so we put some streaks in it and she absolutely loves it. Her stepdad and I took her on a kind of family date to eat and to a movie without her younger brother, One. We had loads of fun and did loads of other things like little dance parties in the living room and nail painting, makeup, dress up, anything and everything. We also let her pick out a cake to have after supper the night after. She picked a white cake with sugary frosting, of course. I also placed a ton of calls and got on a wait list to have her see a counselor or therapist. 8 to 12 weeks, so we may have quite a while to go. I let her know she could talk to me about anything, and she did express her feelings to me in regards to the wedding and how she feels about herself. I listened and reassured her that we all love her and she is important to us, and so many cuddles. When he returned from the honeymoon, we had a face-to-face conversation on my terms. I decided to not just jump into anger and do my best to be nice in hopes of getting answers and giving her a clear understanding of what his actions led to. I started out by asking him what happened, and he told me that he flubbed on not telling me that I wasn't dropping her off at point A anymore and was now going to point B, that the bride was also a little late. They didn't arrange any setup, so the guests were setting stuff up with the groomsmen and the ladies were inside. Things started up really late. They didn't include her in the ceremony but had something planned later during the reception. Grammy didn't know she was our daughter's ride home because he flubbed again in not telling her. Grammy also spent the time after the ceremony caring for our daughter while she was cold and sad. Grammy and stepdad were super angry and left and brought my baby home before the plans for her and before cake. He was really upset how it all turned out. Then I told him about how she came home crying, that we didn't do a bunch of stuff to make her feel better, including dyeing her hair, even though he didn't want that in the past. Told him I'm putting her in therapy to work through this. He cried, still not sure how to feel about that. I don't feel bad that he cried though. I told him we could talk about this more another time. Said I'm sorry things turned out this way and left. She's been having some behavioral issues at daycare now that it's summer by not listening and doing things she knows she shouldn't, like climbing the pile of mats. He and I haven't talked much about it, but he can't look me in the eye anymore and I just don't want to be anywhere near him. He hurt my baby and I'm still feeling the mama bear in my chest whenever I think about it. Tifu, by learning my girlfriend's language. Tifu, when I, 25, learned the language my GF, 22, speaks when she gossips with her friends. This is not my original account. My GF is South African. Her native language is Afrikaans. I've been learning how to speak Afrikaans without my GF knowing. I secretly applied for online courses that I've been using on and off for more than a year now. My plan was to surprise my GF and her family with my American Afrikaans when I finally meet her parents in person for the first time later this year. I never intended to eavesdrop or anything, but learning Afrikaans in secret accidentally exposed me to sensitive information that my GF was sharing on the phone with her Afrikaans-speaking friends from South Africa. It was gossip I was not supposed to understand, but eventually I did. This is what I've heard in the past few months. 1. My GF is planning to surprise me on my birthday by reuniting with her high school metal band and putting on a show for me. 2. My GF wants to tattoo the names of literally all the Harry Potter spells on her back, but she doesn't know how to tell me because she's afraid I'll talk her out of it. 3. My GF casually mentioned that one of the unexpected differences between her glasses and her contact lenses is that when she's on her knees looking up at me with her glasses on, my penis looks much bigger compared to what it looks like through her contact lenses, which is why she's keeping her glasses on during sex. Ouch. 4. My GF is convinced that my parents are swingers because apparently there are always attractive couples hanging out at my mom and dad's house whenever we visit. 5. My GF secretly finished the entire series of Better Call Saul without me, even though we agreed to finish it together, so now she's pretending to have no idea how the show ends. 6. My GF is thinking about canceling the high school metal band reunion for my birthday because she's no longer sure if it's appropriate to team up with two of her exes that are original members of the band. 7. My GF expects her dad not to like me. I would have preferred not knowing most of those things, to be honest, but there is no way for me to unlearn Afrikaans, so now I'm cursed with knowing too much while having to pretend I know nothing. TLDR, I secretly learned my girlfriend's native language as a surprise. But during my learning phase I became capable of understanding what my girlfriend was gossiping about with her friends when she thought I didn't understand. I've come to regret not telling my GF that I was learning her language from the beginning because I know things now that I wish I never knew. Final update, shave my head, enjoy being sued. To recap, someone, a former friend of mine named Gary, is related to someone who has cancer, and Gary went around trying to get our friend group to all shave their heads. He only got a couple of them to agree, and even brought his shaving kit to my apartment because he just assumed I'd join in as well, and was already unboxing it before I even got the chance to say anything. I told him the shaving was not happening. Well, he decided to make an example of me, and waited till I was good and passed out from drinking at a friend's party. I was so dead to the world that I had to be shaken awake by a friend after Gary got caught shaving my head. He took off one of my eyebrows and messed up my hair beyond saving, and he was laughing his butt off over having done it. So yes, the rest had to come off. I ended up pressing charges on Gary for assault, and found out he's been on meds for a mental disorder for years, and he'd stopped taking the meds, which is one of the reasons he was so loopy. But his tune changed pretty quick when police arrested him, since what he'd done qualifies as assault. Gary's family harassed me and tried to make me drop the charges. I not only didn't drop the charges, but I reported the harassment to the police. Only problem is it didn't bloody stop. In fact, it got worse, mainly from Gary's mother, whom I can see where Gary got his charming personality from. She showed up to my apartment a couple of weeks after the shaving incident to scream at me that I knew nothing about what they were going through. And a little hair wasn't a big deal. I told her my hair was a big deal to me, and what Gary did was inexcusable. Well, that earned me a slap on the face, followed by a swift kick to the nuts, followed by a few more kicks to my body after I went down. It was all recorded by a camera that I had watching the front door. Landlord wouldn't let me put in a Ring doorbell cam. One of my neighbors saw her, and screamed at her they'd be calling police. Gary's mom ran, and I ended up going to the hospital with minor injuries, mostly just bruises, a black eye, and a sore groin. Gary's mother got arrested, and I filed a lawsuit against her for attacking me. I saw her in court twice for both her assault on me, and the lawsuit I filed for her assault. This woman had taken several self-defense classes over the years, so she knew how to fight. That had the judge consider her a trained individual, and she was sentenced to 6 months in jail, given 2 years probation, and ordered to pay my medical bills. She actually cried to the judge about the money, but he wasn't having it. It took some time to see her in court again for my lawsuit against her, as she was out of jail by then. I was awarded $10,000 for the harassment, emotional damages, and lost work hours, and she had to pay all court and lawyer fees, which she cried about again because she didn't want to pay anything to the man who'd ruined her and her son's lives. But she had the money for both court cases, because she had no problem paying. But around that time, I heard Gary's relative with cancer passed away. I don't know any details, just that they passed on. I admit that was sad, but I never knew this person. But Gary made their condition his hill to die on when he tried to make an example out of me. Gary got some probation and community service for what he did to my hair, and he cut contact with our entire friend group and eventually moved away. Where to? I don't know. I don't care either. As for my hair, well, it grew back just fine. Took nearly half a year to get it back how it was. My boss had me put out of sight for a while, and I was wearing a hat everywhere for at least a month. I did take that $10,000 I got in the lawsuit and combined it with my savings for a down payment on a house. So I've since moved into a much better abode. I also have a girlfriend now that's living with me. It was a bit soon for her to move in, but there were extenuating circumstances. We're making it work though, and I'm happy. My parents are religious demons. Help me, so I really don't know how to start this, so I'll get right to it. My mom and stepdad are really into New Age science and beliefs. I've never agreed with them on this and didn't know how extreme it was. Recently though, they have become involved in an extremely weird support group. I say that in quotes because I have no effing clue who they are. When I'm around, they never mention any group names or what organization they work for or are a part of. Because of this, I have not had much luck finding out stuff, as New Age cult gives too many results to look into. This Monday my mom and stepdad sat me and my 4 siblings down. They told us that we will be moving at the end of the month to a more stable location within a spiritual community. According to them, they plan to pull all 5 of us. I'm 16, couldn't think of anywhere else to mention this, out of school here, and enroll us in their mind awakening school wherever we move. I tried to get anything out of them, but they refused to talk to me at all about it. According to them, because I'm still a child in mind, body, and spirit, I need to listen to them, not ask questions. I've actually been freaking out since then and have been trying to get advice, but I've been unable to. They cut off the internet, phone and TV Tuesday, and they have been keeping a f-king laser focus on me and my siblings since then. I'm currently at a friend's house, and this is the only way I've actually got access to the internet. This seems like a cult 100% to me. Last night they had 3 people come and talk to me and my siblings, and the stuff they told us was f-king crazy. I was talked to alone by an old man who told me about how my mind is closed and that I will slowly learn to open it as my parents have, and that the leaders will love to meet me and put me in their programs. I need to know what the FCK I can do here. My dad has shared custody of me, and since Monday I've had no contact with him. He is supposed to have a call with me every night, but my mom claims he's been informed and supports this 100%. I tried calling him this morning, but he didn't answer. He lives in another state, so it's kinda hard to get into contact with him outside of phone and email. I'm at a friend's house because I was able to leave the house for the first time in a week this morning after I told my parents I wanted to go to the park, but came here and told my friend everything. Her parents are not home, but she's trying to call them, and I plan to stay here tonight if I can. My parents have forbid me from using the internet because it's full of lies from them. I'm so lost right now it makes me sick. I do not want to go with them to this obvious compound, and I need to know what the FCK I can do here. Can I just run away, and if my parents harbor me, can they get in trouble? If my mom has been lying about my dad, can he do anything? My parents are religious demons. Help me. Since my last post got popular and people still seem interested in my situation, I thought I would give you guys an update on everything. It's been over a month and I'm sorry I kept you guys waiting. Things were pretty crazy and my therapist said it probably wasn't the best idea to rant about it online till I felt ready. Well, now that I'm settled down a bit, I feel like it might be good to get this off my chest anyway. Sorry if this disappoints you guys though, as my dad says I should not include any personal details for fear of leaking my identity. So even though I know the group now, I won't be naming them for fear of it getting back to me. So after I stayed the night with my friend's family, my mom and stepdad tried to get me to come back home immediately. My dad said not to go, so I somehow convinced my mom to let me stay the rest of this day and I would come home that night. This plan didn't work out very well though, as my sister's dad called the police to report that he couldn't contact my sister and was afraid she was kidnapped. It didn't take long before my mom caught on that I was the one who leaked to him their plans, and they freaked out. My mom then came to my friend's house and tried to force her way in to take me because I had been corrupted and needed to be locked away from bad influences till we left for the compound. My friend's parents called the police and I called my dad and he got to talk to my mom. I'll leave it short and say this was a nightmare situation that almost ended with my mom being charged with trespassing. My mom and dad argued on the phone for over 3 hours outside of my friend's house. In the end my dad made it so I would not have to go with them, but the only safe place my mom would agree to me staying is with my uncle 4 hours away. I stayed with him for over a week and it was the worst week of my life. My mom called me constantly to try to talk to me and save me from the evil energies my father had possessed me with. My stepfather also began to send me various threats and told me that at the end of the month I was coming no matter what. After a week of this, everything changed. My mom stopped calling me. My stepdad stopped texting and they went quiet for 4 days. Me, my uncle, my dad, all of them couldn't reach them. My sister's dad also stopped being able to reach them. During this time my mom bought my sister a plane ticket home, and my sister's dad only learned of this when he got a call after my parents dropped my sister off at the airport. After this my mom called me one last time. She proceeded to tell me that she had been meditating, praying to my guardian spirits daily, and talking to the leaders. All to help me open my third eye to see the truth and understand I was being used by evil. During these sessions apparently she finally realized the truth and saw me for the evil spawn I was. According to her, I am evil seed, and that I not only was brought here to bring evil spirits onto her and her good children, I also infected the womb and corrupted my sister. She told me to send my uncle down and pick up all of my worldly possessions that were infected and to not come with him or ever contact her or her family again. She ended by telling me that I was never her child and that she hopes the universe deals with me. The last contact I know about was her telling my dad she wants to revoke her parental rights. At the end of last month they moved to the compound with my 3 step-siblings. I moved out to live with my dad and have been in therapy since then. Things are still pretty raw right now and I really don't feel like getting into the emotions I feel towards this. But I feel like at least updating this may be a start. Thank you everyone who gave advice and sent me kind messages on here offering help. I really do appreciate it. Smile. Told my brother and his wife, and their dog, they can't stay with me while they're looking for a place. I am recently windowed. I lost my husband very suddenly to brain cancer after 40 years of marriage. I was his sole caretaker in his final days, and it was incredibly difficult for me, both mentally and physically. I've been caring for our 2 children their whole lives and still continue to help out my adult children by helping out with my grandkids to this day. After my husband died in November, I packed up my entire life and moved across the country to TN. I bought my dream home. My husband never could bring himself to retire, so we were unable to fulfill this dream when he was alive. I bought my daughter and her 2 kids a home about 30 minutes away from my house, so they could be nearby and have the same fresh start I have. Things have been great, a lot of change, But we're excited to finally have done something big and brave with our lives, and feel hopeful about the future again. Just a new chapter for us all. My kids and I joke between ourselves that my older brother and his longtime wife would surely eventually try to move in with me. They do have a history of taking advantage of situations and people, but at the same time, we're very close and good people at heart. Although, my brother has made a lot of mistakes financially that have haunted them throughout the past several decades of their lives. They currently stay in a tiny apartment in Southern California, owned by their adult son. They don't pay much rent, if any, and while my brother does do some remote freelance consulting work, I have no idea how much they make or have to support themselves. Because I moved from CA to TN, I have a much bigger house now. It's just me and my dogs, which is exactly how I want it. My daughter and her 2 kids totally could have lived with me in my house, but after 40 years of being the main caretaker for my family, I'm ready to take this time for myself, while I still can. I enjoy being alone, having my own space, and doing what I wish each day. For the first time in my 63 years on Earth, my brother and his wife came out to visit a few weeks back and really loved it out here. They talked about finding a place for themselves, maybe a small rental home or an apartment nearby, so we could spend time together. I would love to see them regularly and have them over for BBQs, etc. But several weeks after their visit they texted me letting me know they had hired movers and were going to put all their belongings in my workshop and stay with me for a few days while they looked for a place of their own. My daughter freaked out, said they will never leave, and if they do it'll be because I had to help them get approved for a lease and help with down payment / security deposit, etc. Suddenly, I could feel my newfound freedom, that I've waited over 40 years to claim, slipping through my fingers. The stress of not knowing how long they, and their dog, would stay or if they'd ever leave was overwhelming. I got the courage to tell them that they need to find a place before they move out here. Their reaction was even more upsetting than their initial plans. In fairness to my brother, he replied no prob, as he tends to sweep things under the rug and pretend they never happened, which in this case, was fine with me. But my sister-in-law sent me a defensive text asking why I've lost all faith in them, saying her credit is good and they would only stay with me a few days. However, in the very next line, she wrote that if they didn't find a place, they would get a storage unit for all their belongings, as if their furniture in my workshop would be the issue. I felt like she totally contradicted herself, only further revealing their lack of a stable plan, and vast void in logic that would inevitably fall on me to fill in perpetuity. All I could say is finding a place before moving out here really is the only way, but that I hope they do find a place and move out here soon. She stopped replying to me and is now ghosting me. They know I don't like confrontation and that the tension is surely wearing me down. I have no assurance they could get approved for a lease with their history, nor that they even really want to. A part of me thinks they believe that because I have a large home, live alone, and live comfortably, they deserve a piece of the pie my late husband and I spent our entire lives making. And I'm being selfish by setting what I see as healthy boundaries. Did I dodge the biggest bullet ever, or am I the asshole for not letting them come move in temporarily? Tifu, when I, 24, offered my coworker, 18F, a ride home last night, I offered one of my coworkers a ride home after work. My coworker is an intern, an attractive intern, not gonna lie. However, I've never been tempted to cross that line because A, we work together, and B, the age gap. That being said, despite my professional and platonic relationship with my coworker, I still managed to end up in a temporary love triangle somehow. To pick up where I left off in my opening line, she accepted my offer to drop her off at her apartment when we were done working. On our way, she answered a phone call from her BF. I had no idea what the BF was saying, but based on my coworker's unexpectedly candid responses, it became obvious that her BF was upset at her for posting a photo on social media of her drinking somewhere with random guys. My coworker explained that the random guys actually worked with her and the photos were taken during our monthly office party. She apologized for not telling her BF about it before posting the pictures, but she refused to apologize for enjoying drinks with colleagues. The conversation between my coworker and her BF became more and more heated, especially when she started using words like insecure, immature, and jealous to respond to her BF. I was doing my best to not look like I was eavesdropping, even though it was impossible not to. At some point during the argument, I low-key had to use made-up sign language to communicate to my coworker that I didn't know where I was going and that she was supposed to be navigating the way to her apartment. She was listening to her BF talking at that moment, but she had no problem giving me verbal instructions at the same time. The BF must have realized his GF was in the car with a person of interest because my coworker's next response to him was nope, not in an Uber. One of the guys at work offered to drive me home. She listened and listened and listened while shaking her head and rolling eyes before opening her mouth and suddenly saying yes, he is one of the guys in the fucking photo. In fact, he's the tall guy on the far left with the cute dimples. It was literally the first compliment I've gotten from the opposite sex about my looks since my GF broke up with me a couple of years ago. I was so caught off guard with the cute dimples line that I momentarily stopped focusing on the road and stared at my coworker with deer in headlights eyes. My coworker hung up on her BF and said I just missed the turn off. What was supposed to be a 10-minute drive to my coworker's apartment turned into a 25-minute journey because of my lack of concentration. The BF called again a few minutes later and my coworker had to explain to him why she was still on the road and not at home yet. I didn't have to hear what my coworker's BF was saying to know that he did not like the fact that his GF was still with the cute dimples guy. My coworker eventually became so frustrated, she switched to Danish mid-argument, her native language. I think she assumed I wouldn't understand what she was saying, but I did. My best friend is Scandinavian. When we got high together, he never spoke English, which kind of forced me to learn what he was talking about. My coworker, now speaking Danish to her BF, apologized for upsetting him and said that he had no reason to feel threatened because she would never cheat on him with anyone, especially not with the guys at work. So, there I was, still high on the cute dimples compliment, when I heard my coworker roast all the guys she worked with, including me. I guess she was doing it to convince her BF that he was better than us and kind of boost his ego in the process because she really made us sound bad. She said I never blink my eyes and that I walk like I'm riding an invisible bicycle. On top of that, she said my voice was so husky it made her feel like she needed to clear her throat every time she heard me talk. The tension between my coworker and her BF died down because she was laughing and talking dirty in Danish. When I finally made it to her apartment, I didn't even bother saying goodnight. All I did was smile and wave before leaving. I wish I never offered to drive her home. That was an uncomfortable experience. Monday is gonna be awkward at the office for me. My boyfriend put his hands around my neck in an argument and now I'm stuck. I guess I kind of just want support and maybe some advice. Obviously, I'm breaking up with him. We argued and it led to him holding me down as he choked me screaming at me. I don't really remember it if I'm honest. I tend to block out things like that. So far, I don't have any bruises that I can really see. My throat hurts though, and so does my arm. I feel weird, I'm furious, and I'm heartbroken. Feels unbelievable to be honest. I've gotten some sleep, but my mind just keeps turning after I woke up. If I'm honest, I was pushing him and I did slap him when he wouldn't talk to me. I'm not proud and I know it wasn't okay, but the helpline I called said there's a difference between what we each done. So does my sister. I suppose to receive any advice I'll need to give you a bit of information about our situation. I'm almost 22, a uni student, and we live together with our 2 dogs. I left and came to my sister's after calling a domestic abuse helpline and reaching out to a friend to see if I could stay but wasn't able to. I didn't feel comfortable finding accommodation with the council for the night. He hasn't reached out. When I did go back after leaving for about an hour because I was trying to find somewhere to stay, he didn't cave from his stance on it was my fault and I made him because I wanted a reaction and I got one. I don't currently work but receive a bursary. He does, but when it comes to our financial responsibilities, personal and shared, we pay out the same amount each month, give or take, except he pays an extra £100 towards rent. Sometimes I have to borrow money from him to cover petrol or I can't buy shopping one week. Not so much anymore, but I've had to lend him money before too. It's been a pretty amicable relationship regarding finances for the past few months. I've been thinking about what I'm going to do. Obviously, I can't afford our house by myself until I get a job, and even then I probably couldn't. I've reached out to the same friend and proposed her moving in or us finding some place cheaper as I really don't want to live with my sister and her boyfriend. It's a little bit I don't want to give up my independence. The rest is there is no one that can take in my dogs, even him. My sister has cats and so does his family. Fun fact, I'm allergic. My sister brought up sending them to live with our parents abroad even for a while, but one is 15 and tiny and the other, well, she's a border collie and she needs more than that. I suppose that's worst case scenario, but I'd so much rather avoid it. I think what I've been considering might be really stupid. I want my own bed, my own kitchen and my dogs. I have uni work I need to do, and it's only 20 minutes from my campus instead of 1 hour plus. I've been thinking about going back, but we keep our distance. When he's home from work I can stay upstairs or in the living room, We'll sleep separately, he can take the couch, until we can work out both of our finances and living arrangements. Is that stupid? Probably. But to me, it sounds like the best way to keep from him messing up everything right now and making life a huge mess. Seems like, although probably one of the hardest things I would ever do, will keep things easier in other aspects of my life, aka uni, taking care of the dogs. He's not a violent person, usually. When he gets mad though, he turns really mean and you just can't argue with him. It's like a blank wall. I don't really plan on arguing with him. To be honest, I don't plan on talking to him really at all if I did go back, but we kept separate, except to sort out details. Update: my boyfriend put his hands around my neck in an argument and now I'm stuck. I just want to say a really big thank you to everyone that has commented over the last few hours. At the time of posting, I wasn't in a place to understand the seriousness of what happened to me, and your comments really helped me to see it. I do understand the seriousness of my own actions and how not okay they were. It is something I will be going to work through with a professional, as it is not who I want to be. In case anyone is interested, I've made a domestic violence report with the police and will be speaking to officers later. I've contacted my university and will be contacting my local women's aid for even further support. I'm hoping to gain some support to continue living independently, either on my own or with a friend, and to now have the freedom to grow into a better person. Thank you for helping me. I'm writing this maybe more as a form of closure than I am an update. My original post was over a year ago now, in February of 2022, and sometimes it still feels like I'm living in the aftermath despite my life having completely moved on. The night it all happened, I had no clue to the extent of the abuse I suffered in my 4-year relationship, but posting led to so many people helping me to understand how serious the assault had been. I got in contact with Women's Aid and took a 6-week course called the Freedom Program. It opened my eyes to everything that I hadn't truly seen before. After reporting him to the police, I had to legally fight a domestic abuse charge against me, which they finally dropped. This went on for over a year until they eventually charged him with domestic breach of the peace. I didn't get to sit in court as witness. They said everything discovered through my work with Women's Aid wasn't relevant. It still feels like a slap in the face, but I've made my peace the best I can. I live in a completely different area now, but I still have to travel to visit my family. When I do, I struggle with the idea that everybody I once knew down there probably has no idea what really happened. I'm probably the villain. They'll never know about being isolated from my family, not being allowed to work while simultaneously being berated for not having money, being mocked and ignored while I had panic attacks, and the intimacy that made me cry every single time. I don't want them to know, but I dread to think what they've been told. I'm 23 now. I'm in a relationship with somebody that never scares me and never has me questioning his faithfulness. I feel respected and seen. He's loving towards my dogs, and I never worry about what happens to them when I'm not home. It hasn't been easy, and it's still taking effort to work on learning how to be in a healthy relationship. I had to learn how to be cuddled again, a notion that makes me feel miserably sad for the girl I used to be. It's been the hardest year of my life. I left uni, started to work, but was crippled with my anxiety and mental health. I can still remember that night crystal clear, and it keeps me up some nights, but there's so much positivity coming soon. I'm starting college, completely disregarding my HNC and going into the automotive industry. It came after I finally felt safe to embrace my biggest passion, and I sold my car to buy an unreliable Mr. 2 that has put a smile on my face every single day since. I guess I have to thank Reddit, because I don't know if I would have started my journey to healing as soon as I did. It's time for me to let go and finally enjoy this life I am so lucky to live. Am I the soul for not wanting to give my half-brother a share of the house and estate left to me and my disabled sister? Hey, Reddit, I am 28, am in a difficult situation, and I'm unsure if I'm acting appropriately. My father suddenly and quite recently passed away, leaving behind a house, a few cars, and some of his possessions. The problem is that even though he is biologically connected to my half-brother, M30, from a previous relationship, my dad never asserted or paid child support for him. They were practically strangers. Things are getting complex because my half-brother is now claiming he deserves his fair share of the property and assets. My sister, 25F, is disabled. She and I were raised by both our mom and dad. Our father never made any attempt to get to know our half-brother due to being overwhelmed with his work in his earlier years and due to the fact that his mom demanded full custody. We all knew he existed, but beyond that we knew nothing about him or his life. Our father never spoke of him, and it appeared that they had no communication at all. We learned that our father didn't have a will when he passed away. That meant that his kids, including my half-brother, would receive a portion of his assets according to the law. The problem is that my sister and I have lived in our father's house since day one. It now serves as our home. Additionally, the home is built around the needs of my sister. My father invested in the home so my sister would be able to live a comfortable life in this house, which is nearly impossible anywhere else. Now, my half-brother appears out of nowhere and demands his part of the estate and house. Although I am aware of his biological connection to our father, I find it difficult to believe that he has a right to the house that my sister and I have called home our whole lives. There are modifications in the house that are needed due to my sister's disabilities. Relocation, both physically and emotionally, would be difficult. I've struggled to decide what to do. I can relate to my half-brother, who is practically a stranger to me, on the one hand. While my sister and I were there, taking care of our father when he was alive, he never had the opportunity to meet our father. If my half-brother has his way, we would lose our connection to that place and our close relationship with our father. Without a will, according to attorneys I've spoken with, my half-brother has a strong case. I don't know if I can just let go of the house because it is so important to my sister's well-being and carries so many memories. It feels unfair. I have tried to talk to my half-brother, but he seems determined to battle for his part. He and his other brother, raised together, said he is entitled to more than 1/3 because of the lack of child support, and the fact he didn't have a dad led to a tougher life, which is deplorable. My sister needs special devices just to complete basic everyday functions. Reddit: am I the soul for not wanting to split the house and estate with my half-brother? Should I put my sister's needs and our emotional ties to the house ahead of everything else? Or should I try to find a way to involve my half-brother in this challenging situation? My friend ruined several people's lives and I'm glad he did. I have a friend from high school. We were somewhat close but never best friends. He was always super chill, calm during a crisis, really mellow and kind. He didn't talk a lot about what he did and was pretty private about his personal life, which our friend group always respected. He always disappeared immediately after school because he said he had a part-time job. In 10th grade, a girl who we sort of knew was roped and the 3 people who did it were never charged. Everyone knew they did it, but they were on a sports team and got away with it. She committed unalive later that year. My friend and I are in college now and we've gotten a lot closer. One night he asked me if I remembered that girl and I said yes. He asked me if I remembered the guys who did it and prodded me about how I felt about them. Obviously I hate them and said so. I was drunk and this was the first time we'd ever really spoken about this, so I was loud about it. And he got this sort of bizarre look on his face and showed me their Facebook/Insta/other sociemed, news articles, public info, etc. It was a really in-depth investigation of their lives and I admit I was weirded out at first. Apparently none of them are in college now. One is working minimum wage, one is serving time for assault, one isn't doing anything except bumming around at home. He told me that he'd actually been friends with the girl before her unalive, which I never knew, and that he'd quit his part-time job and started, in his own words, obsessing over getting justice. The main thing I remember was just how drunk I was and how weirdly calm he was. It still feels really fuzzy to me. He pulled up a drive with literal years of evidence. For one guy, he used his reputation as a teacher's pet to lower his grades, since the teachers believed him when he said the other guy didn't pull his weight on a major group project. That ruined his sports chances because he didn't make the GPA cut and the coach dropped him. He managed to find one of their private emails by reading it over his shoulder and used this Spokeo-like site to dig up more info. He anonymously emailed screenshots of their rape threats to the school counselor and got one of them investigated. He wasn't charged, but it made his team drop him because he couldn't show up to practice anymore. There was so much more I won't go into. There was a bunch of little things too, like how he sometimes shared cheat sheets in the class GC that had wrong information to keep their grades lower. I also used those sheets. He apologized for making my grades worse, or how he convinced a few upper year friends of his not to tutor one of them and they failed physics. He swore that he never made up any rumors or false information and worked as legally as possible since he was still hoping the courts would charge them. That never happened, but he did end up tipping the scales enough to ruin their lives. According to him, they ruined their own lives. He just documented it and sent it to the right people. When we were done, he told me not to tell anyone and I promised I wouldn't. We sat there for a while and my head was spinning because I had no idea he'd done all of this. He thanked me for listening and said he'd never admitted any of this before, and went to bed. I admit I'm still disturbed by this, but it's not like he can unruin their lives now, and at least they faced some sort of consequences. The more I sit with this, the more I think that I'm glad something happened, even if it was like this. We're still friends. I still trust him. He admitted that he's probably got a mental disorder that made him this way and he's been in therapy for a long time. To this day, none of them ever faced justice for what they did to her, but their lives fell apart anyways. I'm glad that happened. I'm glad he did what he did. My wedding was ruined. I've debated about posting this, but I have to rant to someone. Me, 23F, and my now husband, Josh, 26, had our wedding last week. At first everything was beautiful. I got married to my high school sweetheart and was so happy. It felt like my fairy tale come true. I felt like a princess. While I'm taking photos with my bridesmaids, I see Josh's cousin, Nicole, with a girl, I'll call her Sarah, I'm unfamiliar with. She seems non-talkative but is friendly to me at first. We finish our photos and go inside to relax and chat before I walk down the aisle. A long while later, after the vows were exchanged, I bump into Sarah while on my way to the food table. She's clearly intoxicated, but through her slurred speaking I could hear her ranting about how crowded the venue was, but then it escalates. I was getting food for my mom when she said to me that she's surprised Josh married someone like me because Josh could do better than me. I tried to laugh it off and I told her I was very lucky to have him. The interaction left me feeling upset, but I brushed it off as her just being drunk and I started drinking too and soon forgot about it. Time goes past and I'm feeling good. Me and my husband along with all the guests were dancing. Suddenly, I hear a crashing sound near the food table and all of us rush over to see what was happening. I see Sarah on the ground sobbing hysterically, and Nicole was trying to calm her down. She had completely smashed my wedding cake and ripped the decorations. My heart was broken to see my wedding cake completely destroyed, but I tried to ask what was wrong, and Sarah started screaming and cursing me. I was confused and drunk, so I started shouting back and ordered my husband to kick her out. He didn't want to and told me she should be allowed to stay since she was a friend. I argued with him and told him that she's ruined my wedding. It eventually took my husband and Nicole to get her under control and convince her to go home. Nicole left with Sarah, and when my husband came back he looked angry with me. He completely blew me off for the rest of the night and I could tell the atmosphere was now awkward for all my guests. The next day my husband lectured me about how I hurt Sarah's feelings and demanded I apologize to her. We argued and he slept on the couch. Things eventually cooled down, so I tried to talk to him about it the following days, but he shut me down and just told me I was being overdramatic about the situation. I've never even seen Sarah until my wedding. I have no clue why she would lash out like that. I'm hurt that my husband doesn't see my perspective. Even though she was drunk, she ruined my special day and now I can't think of the happy memories I have because I can only think of that incident. Sorry for the long read. Thanks for listening. Update 2. My wedding was ruined. I want to start off by clarifying a few things. People keep asking how he was loving and caring if he did this to you. He brings me flowers every week. He brings me lunch to my work. He cooks for me. He takes me on a fancy date once a month. He takes care of my mother. He offers to pay for everything. He always tells me how much he loves me and he used to make me feel so safe. I would have never married him if I knew he would put me through all this. I know this story is hard to believe, but it's not just a story. This is my life. Also, turns out that cheating was actually going on for closer to 6 years. Yes, she was the only girl he cheated with. I am upset that Sarah destroyed my marriage, but I know it's ultimately Josh's fault. Anyways, Josh gets off of work at 10 p.m. so I stayed up late to talk to him. I made Nicole promise me not to tell him I know, and shockingly she stayed true to her promise. He came through the door and I called him to sit with me while I was at the kitchen table. I told him I knew everything. At first, I was shouting and ranting to him, but then it turned into me begging him to prove to me that it wasn't true. Of course, it was true, and after a while he confessed to everything. Hearing it from him made it all too real. He tried to argue that since it was in high school, it shouldn't affect me that much and that it was a stupid mistake. Yeah, a stupid mistake he let go on for over 5 years. I know we were young, but he knew better. He begged me to stay and told me how sorry he was for everything he's put me through. I told him how much I love him, but I can't stay with him. I asked him why he defended her over me and he said he didn't want to upset her because he knew how psycho she can be. I know he still loves her, or at least cares about her, because why would he still defend her years later? I can't just cut him out of my life yet. The house we live in, and my car is all in his name. Not only have I lost my husband, but I've lost my whole life. After I made it clear to him I was leaving him, he got angry and we started arguing. He tried to say at least he wasn't still cheating, but I don't care, it still hurts the same. I called my mom and told her everything, so she's letting me stay with her for now. Since I live in Pennsylvania, I have 60 days to get my marriage annulled, which I plan to do. Josh keeps trying to call me but I'm not answering it. He showed me what love is, but now he's ruined love for me. I can't see myself ever dating and trusting someone like this again. Not only was my wedding destroyed, but my whole life is now destroyed. I have no car, no house. He has full access to my bank account and I'm sure he'll fight to keep the dogs. If anyone wants an update on when I go to get my stuff, I'll give one. None of his family apart from Nicole know he cheated or anything about what's going on. I loved his parents, and they loved me too. His dad took me in after I lost mine. As for Nicole and Sarah, they've tried to contact me, but I haven't replied. Please let me be clear when I say that when you're so blindly in love, you never consider the one person you love and trust the most in this world to be cheating on you. My lawyer said he has to give me everything I paid for, and I should get my bank information changed as soon as possible. My lawyer also said getting my marriage annulled would be the best option. If I can prove my car has been paid by me, then he has to give it to me. But right now, there's nothing I can do about my car or house since it's all legally in his name. My lawyer is fighting for me though. I'm praying that Josh will give me the dog. Lastly, thank you again to anyone who's been kind to me throughout this. I hate reading comments because most are negative and it keeps me thinking about this whole situation. I appreciate any of you who've supported me and gave me advice more than you know. It's really helped me through this disaster, and without you guys talking some sense into me, I think I would have just stayed with him. Now I know that he isn't the man I thought I married, and I don't want him to be the father of my children anymore. I'm not sure if I'll update again. I might if something interesting happens. Goodbye for now. Update 3. My wedding was ruined. Sorry for the inactivity. I haven't been feeling too well, but I'm a bit better now. I'm glad some of you wanted an update because I have one to tell. At first Josh tried to keep my things, in an effort to persuade me to get back with him. He stopped that after a day or two though. The great news is I got my car and my ex-husband gave me my dog without me having to take him to court. I could have gotten it anyway, but him just giving it over made things a lot easier on me. My bank information has changed, and he didn't try to take any of my money. I've still lost my home, but there's nothing I can do about that at the moment. My lawyer has worked so hard for me and I'm so grateful to him. I had a calmer conversation with my ex when I was over to get my stuff, and I've gotten a bit of closure. We talked about all our memories and had kind of our final conversation. He apologized for everything, said he understood why I was leaving him, and told me if I wanted him to leave me alone, he would. My marriage was annulled, but I'm kinda devastated that it's like it never happened now. The reason why Sarah and Nicole were calling me is because they tried to tell me I'm ruining his reputation and being a drama queen about something that happened years ago. I've blocked both of them now. Every time someone asks about why our marriage was annulled, I tell them the truth, and that's upsetting him. He doesn't like that his family and coworkers know about how much of a prick he is. I wasn't going to tell his family because I don't think that's my place, but they know now anyway. His parents caught wind of what happened and called me to apologize and check up on me. They were like my second parents. I'm forever grateful to them for taking me in as their own. I'm truly going to miss having them as my in-laws. I'm living with my mom as of now, but I'm looking for cheap apartments nearby. I've never lived by myself, so I'm pretty scared of it. To my knowledge, my ex and Sarah didn't get back in contact, and from the looks of things don't plan to in the future. To those asking why my things were in his name, I obviously didn't think it'd end like this. I trusted him with my life, and he made a lot more money than I did. It was better to let him handle the finances. Thankfully he hasn't screwed me over by following through with his threats to keep my car and stuff. I know I'm only 23. I know I have a lot of life left in me, but it's not feeling like that right now. I'm still in shock about everything and definitely in denial. I know I'll be okay eventually, but this has screwed my whole perspective of love up. My life has taken a full turn from what should have been the happiest moment of my life. I'm bitter. I think about what if I would have done something different. Maybe then he wouldn't have done all this, and I keep making excuses for him. In some type of way, I'm glad I know who he truly is now. It sickens me to know that I almost had kids with him, and he would have let me go through my whole life keeping his cheating past a secret from me. I don't know how men like this can sleep peacefully at night after completely ruining people's lives. It's shocking how many of you have went through something similar. I'm so sorry to those who've been through a heartache like this. It's made me laugh about how you guys are trying to create revenge plans for me. I really appreciate it, but I'm going to let everything rest. Mostly because it would hurt me more if I did take revenge. People have let me know his nice gestures were the bare minimum, but I've never seen anyone do things like that. My mother and father were divorced, so I've never seen love displayed like that. I thought it was something that only happened in Hallmark films. Thank you all for your kind messages and comments. I read all of them and it's helped me throughout all this. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Thanks for everything. Someone broke into the house. The police said it was them. Okay, so to start this, I live in a very rural town in Australia. I have a close-knit group of about 4 to 5 friends and we hang out all the time. On this specific day I was at my friend's house. About 2 days before this, her family came home and all the doors were wide open yet nothing was taken. This family instanced one to leave their doors open, specifically in this town where crime runs rampant. On the day that I was over, let's call these 2 friends Alyssa and Mike, not real names. Me and Mike were over at Alyssa just hanging out on our phones when the front door banged open. We all looked at each other but brushed it off as Wind slamming the door. In hindsight, Wind would not have been able to reach this door as it was in a little covering. I'd how to explain it, but you walk upstairs, there is a little room and then there is the front door. Maybe 2 minutes after, the 2 sliding back doors slammed very loudly. We again brushed it off to not scare ourselves. We are kinda dumb, sorry Lamau. But then we heard loud noises inside the house, and footsteps running around their noisy wooden floor. This is where alarm bells started firing in my head. I was thinking about how someone had already been there, and wondering if this was the same person/people. We jumped up and me and Alyssa held the bedroom door closed. Her room doesn't have a lock. Alyssa suggests that we call the police. I didn't think it was a good idea, but as I'm holding the door, someone starts running and slams into her door. At this point it was definitely time to call the police. They pick up, try to talk to Alyssa, a little difficult because she is bawling her eyes out. Eventually the operator understood and within less than 2 minutes police are at the door. These police officers were very kind and just asked about the situation before saying we found the kid. I thought they meant the person that broke in, so I asked them about the kid. The police looked confused and said the missing 5-year-old? We had no clue that there was a missing child on the loose. The police officers said there was about 40 cars looking for this kid and many police knocking on doors to ask if anyone had seen her. While I think the police were kind, their reasoning for the break-in was crazy. They said it was probably a police officer running in and looking for the kid. We all looked confused and then he realized what he said and backtracked, saying they should have announced themselves though. Pretty scary experience with police officers trying to calm us down, but after talking about it with my friends, whoever broke in probably saw Alyssa's mom leaving the house with 2 teens in the back, so they thought the house was empty. Alyssa has a brother, so altogether they have 3 in the house, but on this day her brother had a friend over and they were driving somewhere. So please, the robber who frequents my friend's house never come back, TT.